2025 regular meeting of the Mill Creek City Council to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would Councilmember Paddock please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have roll call, please.
Mayor Holtzclaw,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vignell.
Here.
Councilmember Cavallari,
Here.
Councilmember Steckler,
Here.
Councilmember Allison,
Here.
Councilmember Duque,
Here.
Councilmember Paddock.
Present. Okay, we'll move on to audience communication. I'm going to start with our sign-up sheet, and first on the sheet to speak about a topic that I think is near and dear to me too right now is Ms. Brandon. If you put your name and city of residence, and try to keep your comments, if you could, limited to 3 minutes. Hold on, is that mic on? It is. There we go.
Karen Brandon, and do you want my address too? Is that what
No, no.
I do live in the city of Mill Creek. So, good evening, council members and staff. I'm coming tonight to complain. I would like to complain about the e-bike riders, the 8 to 12-year-old e-bike riders on our streets. We have an 8-year-old that lives across in Woodfern that comes into our division in Heatherstone, and he rides his e-bike. He crosses that busy road. Half the time he doesn't look. He just expects everybody to stop for him. And he goes around in our large cul-de-sac as fast as the bike will go. And we have a lot of Amazon truck deliveries in there. And he's really just completely unaware of what would be safety riding that bike. And then there's a couple of what look like 12-year-olds over in Evergreen, and they ride down the hills and through the stop signs. They do not stop, and they go as fast as they can. And that particular intersection, when you first come into Evergreen, that's a real accident waiting to happen. This afternoon, I was sitting in the backyard reading, and there were 3 of them that went by. They looked like from what I could see through the fence, in the 10 to 12-year-old range. And they were riding, one had an electric scooter and 2 were on e-bikes. And the 2 on e-bikes all 3 were in the street on Seattle Hill Road. And they were I don't know what it's called, but when they just ride on the back wheel of the bike with the front wheel up, they're doing that on Seattle Hill Road on a busy street. I'm appalled at what's happening with these kids. And we were in Costco last week, and they have what I've seen most of the small e-bikes. They've got one up on one of their shelves that's $69. So it's not
Yeah, hold on. Excuse us, the mic cut out again. We want to make sure that we get this recorded. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. So that's why I'm here today. That I'd like to ask the city council, to ask the city staff to take a look at what can be done. Education classes, have the police stop these kids and then talk to their parents about it. That at least would be a good step forward. I'm quite sure most of the parents don't know what their kids are doing on these e-bikes out on the main streets. And I would like to also thank the police chief that in the past 6 weeks, I've seen the city of Mill Creek Police out working more than I've seen probably in the last 20 years. And I've lived here 32 years. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for your comments. We have talked with staff about the electric motorcycles, and I'm glad that Representative Berg is here tonight, because I'm not sure if the part of the solution is a city solution or a state. But Mr. Wright, you're the next on the list.
Good evening, city council members, city manager, city staff. When a driver is pulled over, the police officer asks, please give me your driver's license, proof of insurance, vehicle registration. Other questions being, was the driver on the phone? Does the motorcycles have a motorcycle endorsement? Does the motorcycle have its lights on? Is the motorcycle wearing a helmet? Then when it comes to driving a golf cart on public streets or sidewalks, the officer can ask, does the driver have a driver's license? Does the driver have insurance? Does the driver have proof of ownership, which should just mean having a revenue producing decal from the city? What is a police officer's options when he meets two pre-teenagers not old enough to have a driver's license or on a motor scooter and motorbike without a helmet? We've been in and out of people on the sidewalks. Two young boys driving around the cul-de-sac street in a four-wheeler. Young male doing wheelies on the highway, what happens to him, as my wife pointed out. People riding motor scooters, e-bikes at night without even lights on. I witnessed a young girl and without a helmet riding a motorcycle scooter on the sidewalk, looking at her phone. What happens to her? What happens if she hits someone or an object? Does she have a license? Does she have insurance? How does the victim get compensation for their injury? With e-bikes becoming even more popular in Scottsdale, Arizona, and with the surge of serious injury on July 18th, a few days ago, city passed a new ordinance to crack down on the age of riders. The new city ordinance now bans anyone under 16 from riding class 3 bikes. With the e-bikes, the motor scooters growing problem, what will our city do about these? No driver's license, no vehicle registration, no insured drivers. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Wright. Is there anyone else in chambers that would like to address staff or the council? Is there anyone online? Not seeing anyone online. We'll have an opportunity at the end of the meeting again. Brings us to our presentations and turn it over to Chief for the swearing in.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. One of my more appreciated jobs, I really enjoy this, is the opportunity to swear in new officers and those that are being promoted to the higher ranks. Tonight, we have the privilege to swear in a new sergeant to the police department. Corporal Todd Bridgman is becoming a sergeant. Actually, it happened on the 16th of this month. So I'd like to go ahead and invite him up. Sergeant Bridgman has been with our agency nearly 20 years. He has been a patrol officer, a school resource officer, an FTO, a corporal, and now is being promoted to sergeant. I've been talking to Todd at length over the years about this promotion opportunity, and he's finally taken us up on it. So we're really appreciative of that. So without further ado, I'll invite his family up as well, his wife, Shayna, his son, Hayden, and his daughter, Tegan, and we'll swear him in. Sure, go ahead and come down here. swear you. Go ahead and raise your hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Todd Bridgman,
Do hereby affirm that I will never betray the trust bestowed upon me.
do hereby affirm that I will never betray the trust bestowed upon me.
As a Mill Creek Police Sergeant,
As a Mill Creek Police Sergeant,
I will always maintain my integrity,
I will always maintain my integrity,
my character,
my character,
and the public trust.
and the public trust.
I will have the courage to hold myself
I will have the courage to hold myself
and others accountable
and others accountable
for our actions and will demonstrate the finest traits
for our actions, will demonstrate the finest traits
of a leader at all times.
of a leader at all times.
Congratulations. And if you want, go ahead. He doesn't have his vest on, so you can just give him his badge. You decide to. All right. So, all right, and then if you want to have a picture with this family, if you guys want to come down as well, council, and take a picture.
Oh, and I'm on this full time. Oh, you guys are like. Switching it up. All right, 1, 2, 3. And then. Yeah, yeah, Sean's the right one.
Thought you was gonna take another one, that's gonna bomb. Stephanie wants to stay out of the way.
All right, next up on our agenda tonight, we are looking at our 2025 legislative update. As most of you are aware, we have been really actively working on having a legislative agenda every year and working with our representatives. And tonight we have Representative Berg coming to talk to us. Representative April Berg represents the 44th District, which includes Mill Creek, Snohomish, Clearview, Maltby, Echo Lake, and parts of Everett. She serves as chair of the House Finance Committee and a member of the Appropriations Committee. Rep. Berg is a member of the Washington State Economic Revenue and Forecast Council and the Joint Legislative Audit Committee. She is also a Washington delegate to the Streamlined Sales Tax Governing Board and is the co-chair of the National Association of State Legislators Budget and Revenue Committee. In the private sector, April has worked as an aerospace program manager and as owner of the Edmonds Inn Bed and Breakfast. She received her degree from Oregon State University and has served on the Mill Creek Planning Commission as well, and a member of both the Edmonds School Board and the Everett School Board. April and her family have lived in Snohomish County for more than 25 years. Welcome, Representative Berg. Thank you for coming in tonight.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here tonight. It's great to do a legislative update in Mill Creek. Before I jump into it, I just want to level set a little bit. This is my hometown. I represent the 44th District, but I am a Mill Creeker through and through. Listening to folks testify about the e-bikes, literally, I was sitting in Kirkland the other day with a colleague watching the e-bikes, and my colleague said, this is going to be the next law we have to pass. I live in Evergreen. I've seen exactly what the two folks talked about, and so that's near and dear. It's also near and dear to see Chief White swear in a new sergeant, because as he knows, and many of you know, my brother is DC Metro. Was DC Metro. He retired this year after a long time of service. I believe it was over 25 years after doing the Air Force Reserve. So it's public safety, law enforcement, and serving the community is just in my DNA. I also, before I want to start this update, every update I've given thus far, I've started with what happened during session. So we did have a 105-day session. It's our long session. We had people die during session. I have to start with that because I have to give respect. We had Speaker Emeritus Chop die during session. We also had State Senator Bill Ramos die during session. I'm saying that really bluntly because as soon as session ended, we started going to funerals. We also had a lot of spouses pass away during session. It was incredibly stressful. I will say the deaths were from, they were sudden, they were from things like aneurysms, heart failure, and one of my dearest friends and colleagues also had a massive stroke 1 week after session. So being here tonight to testify and to tell you what happened, I don't take that for granted. These are hard jobs that we do as elected officials, that you do as elected officials. I don't take that for granted. And I just want the folks who are listening to this at home to understand that we are all doing the best we can. We honestly are. And so with that, let's talk about what happened during session. So first, let's talk about some of the good stuff. Our capital budget was actually in really good shape. I know, oopsie, did I just touch something that made everything go away? Okay, awesome. Our capital budget was in really good shape. That's the budget that we bond against. So when you hear about budget deficits, we have 3 different budgets. One is our capital budget, one is our general fund, and the other is transportation. So this capital budget was actually in good shape because it bonds against our general fund. So some of that money went to the city of Mill Creek. Over $1 million came to the city of Mill Creek for potentially a Boys and Girls Club. That money went directly to the Boys and Girls organization, and the only way they can spend that money is if they make a club in the city of Mill Creek. So I'm hoping that wheels are turning right now. And they are really good partners. They've done a great job in Snohomish and across the state, putting clubs in communities with community activism, as well as community partners, the local city councils, the local county councils. So this is not a, they get to do whatever with the money. This is about you. This is about the city and the residents who really do, I think, need someplace for their kiddos to go after school. We've got gymnastics, we've got swimming, we've got tennis, we've got the country club for golf, and hopefully one day we will have the Boys and Girls Club. The other places that this money went in the 44th was to Snohomish for our Conservation District's Natural Resource Center. That was about 500,000, or sorry, yeah, 500,000. And then Snohomish Public Safety Campus. If you look at downtown Snohomish, they are looking at building out a civic campus for their city hall, as well as fire, police. They're going to do some different things around emergency planning. So we've given them another $1 million for that. We also gave them money in the last budget. I will tell you the secret to how they got that money. They asked. So I'm just putting that out in the universe. And so we need to ask for the funds that we need for our city. And I say we because I'm a member of the city. And so if there are things like projects and civic campuses, Boys and Girls Club, I know the different sub areas and DRCC, there's going to be needs. And I would just really encourage you to come to my office, come to Senator Lovett, come to Rep. Donaghy, and ask for the funding. In addition to that, we did get some minor works preservation. That was about 16 million. And then we also got, it looks like there's a total kind of a lot of different amalgamations of things, about 14 or 18 million coming in. So I just want to put that out there. That's money that is coming into our district. And it's also money that could be coming into Mill Creek, depending on what the needs are. And next, let's see here. Let's see, what's the best way to go? Oh, on the keyboard. I'm not sure if
I can forward it for you.
Oh, that would be amazing. Because I'm not sure that this one's going to work. There we go. So a high-level state budget overview. So we, So we came in with a deficit, about a $16 billion deficit. We cut 8 billion and we raised 8 billion. Those are just rough numbers. Some of that went to different buckets. And of course, you know, we are lucky enough to have the CCA, which does generate its own revenue. And that's our carbon fuel standard that's on the open market. And that generated about 380 million. So just to give you some buckets as to where that money went, we did put money into K-12 construction, as well as affordable housing, as well as behavioral health facilities, as well as early learning. And some of the statewide capital budget came from our capital gains tax. So as you know, in our last budget, in our last election cycle, all of those things were upheld by the voters. So those are revenue sources that we can absolutely depend on going forward. And so here's kind of a higher level of the overall operating budget. So we did fund our state government, our long-term care and developmental disabilities. What you're gonna see on this slide, I put in red some of the deductions. So I just said we raised 8 billion and we cut 8 billion. This gives you an idea of places that we did have to cut this year because of our deficit. And so some of that was around case management. We did some cuts around Medicaid. We did delay some payments. So those were seen as a little bit easier to do when Fair Start for Kids and other things that we hadn't started, we simply delayed them. And then we did do some cuts to transition to kindergarten, as well as reducing most all, not all, but most all of any of your OSPI grant pass-throughs. So if you've heard me in past years talk about my vegan meals for kids, where we could go out and we could have grants so school districts could have healthy vegan meals for kids, that's gone. And so, and that's okay, because sometimes we have to make hard decisions when we're in a deficit situation. This is a kitchen table budget. And so we cut 8 billion as well as raising 8 billion because there were certain services and obligations, contracts, bargaining that we did have to continue paying. In addition to that, we did make investments in housing and homelessness, human services, climate and clean energy, as well as public safety. Where you see the deficits around public safety, we did close some DOC facilities. That was in coordination with our Department of Corrections. And we did shift some costs around our basic law enforcement academy costs. So let's talk about housing. So I know in areas like Mill Creek, like across the state, housing is a big issue. We did pass rent stabilization. We passed it at 10%, and I believe the state, the budget office that does that, they just came out with 9.7% is what the maximum that will be able to be charged in terms of an increase for ongoing housing. New construction is exempted, and mobile home parks are capped at 5%. You do need a 90-day notice for rent increases. We did pass, and this is a bipartisan bill, middle housing in rural areas. So as we saw last year, we did some middle housing work. Now we are expanding that to rural areas. And we did a housing cost task force. This was a Republican bill that was really well stakeholdered, because looking at the cost of housing and what some of those true drivers are to letting us build and build more abundantly, we want to see what those are. So we did have a task force bill passed. Let's talk about education. We had some great bipartisan bills around education. We are extending our special ed services to 22. That's a federal law, so we're in compliance at this point. But the big thing, and I don't think I highlighted on here, we got rid of that artificial cap around special ed. If you've heard from some of your school districts, there was a cap on how many special ed students we would fund. It was artificial, it was made up, it was budgetary. Now we got rid of that. So whatever the special ed population in your district is, if it's 5% or 20%, the state will now pay its fair share. Teacher residency, that was another one around residency and apprenticeships. That was a great bill that we passed to establish a pathway. And then educational interpreters, that was a Senator Lovick bill. And that was great so that we could go ahead and look at our PESB board for educational standards and make sure that we have proper educational interpreters. Public safety. Now, this was a big one, and I gave it its own personal slide. So when you saw the new governor come in, and we do have a governor whose first term this was, very focused on public safety, rightfully so. As the chair of House Finance, having to raise revenue, the bills that came to me from him were very, very expensive, about $500 million. So we went ahead in the House and wrote a new bill, and this bill actually passed with bipartisan support in both the House and Senate. And this bill will allow allow city governments like yourself to do a potential councilmatic tax increase to pay for public safety in a very flexible way. What I heard from a lot of law enforcement folks, both at the county and city, as well as WSP, is they wanted flexibility around that funding. And so if it's to put more officers within your force, go ahead and do it. You can do that. If it's to put folks for ride-alongs, if it's for behavioral support services, if it's for one district actually talked to me about a situation with the YMCA where they wanted to go ahead and co-fund an after-school program, this would give them those resources. This is very flexible money that cities and counties are able to raise from within their population, and there is a matching state grant as well. So the state does have some skin in it, as well as the jurisdictions that need that additional support in terms of law enforcement. This will be administered through the Criminal Justice Training Center, which is a very efficient and quick way to do it. We kept the treasurer's office out of it, love the treasurer's office, but having them administer a grant for public safety felt a little bit bureaucratic. So we really wrote this bill with intention to get dollars in community around public safety in the way that you, being the local government, need them. And lastly, contact me. I'm here, I'm incredibly accessible. I'm trying to have more assistants up in my office in City Hall North, but I am really there. I do a lot of national work in terms of tax policy and sit on a lot of committees, but I am still calling Mill Creek my home, and it's where I hang my hat in terms of an office door. And so please, if you've got questions, there's a little notepad out there. You can always leave me a note if I'm not there. And of course, during session, I do stay in Olympia for the majority of it just because of the distance. So with that, I'm going to stop and take questions from council because I feel like you might have some questions about what we did last year.
Sure, there will be. Councilmember Steckler.
Hi, April. 3 quick questions for you. Number one, any update for us on the Fresh to Table Farmers Market that was going to go in over here?
Oh, that is a great question. So that's a county, so the money that came in was both from the state and feds. That is a county project. And my understanding is that it's still on schedule. Now, what on schedule means, I am not incredibly sure, but I will say the county has been working day and night to get that going. And the goal still is to have McCollum Park be a farm to table year-round tinted market with the processing center, as well as the, so there's a processing in the kitchen. And WSU will be moving, my understanding is their soil sciences there. So they'll have a degree program as well there. And of course, the pool has gone away.
Right. Okay, I know where to send that question then. Next question, you mentioned these legal cuts or law cuts. Did any of those affect the 2 academies that just recently got opened, or there no effect on them?
No, there were no effect on the academies.
Fantastic.
No, and so these cuts were, and honestly, those are more like reductions. And so the governor asked, as well as the legislature, to ask for efficiencies. And so these are more just simply reductions. We did not cut staff. We did not cut the academies. We are still graduating folks. And if you see Senator Lovick's emails come out with his newsletters, you will know exactly when the next graduation is, no matter if it's on this side of the mountains or the other side of the mountains.
And my last quick question, as you know, your town, your home, place you care about, has got a huge comprehensive growth plan that we've recently announced with a lot of construction coming. And every time you come up, I never miss an opportunity to ask you, any help you see coming from the legislature for ways to reduce the long-term protections against condominium developers, to make them a little bit more amicable to developing condominiums as opposed to apartments?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So, and I should have put that on the slide. So we actually did have a bill pass around condo. Oh, and Mayor Holtzclaw might know this one better than me, but there was one that we passed around condo development and limiting the liability so that it became more attractive for developers to build. So that actually did pass. It passed the Senate and the House. I believe it was signed into law. I know some folks had a little trepidation because they felt like, was this taking away some protection they already had? I talked with Mill Creek HOA folks. This seemed like a good kind of, I don't want to say split the baby, but it was a good law to give the protections to homeowners they need, but also the incentive to builders that they need, so they don't feel like they're on the hook forever and ever for condos. So we did actually do that. So I will make a note to get that bill to you to see if that scratches the itch.
Oh yeah, and the biggest concern is how much did it decrease the years of protection.
And I'm not sure if it decreased it by an amount of years or money. So I will have to get
Okay.
back to you on that. I don't want to
Good
go
to
over
know.
my skis on that, but we did actually address that this year. And I remember having some late night conversations, making sure that it was not putting undue burdens on folks in our community. I make sure that our HOAs are very much protected and thought of in bills that I'm voting on. So earning my vote meant that it did not do something harmful to any HOAs.
That would be great to get the specifics on that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Allison?
Thanks for the update. I actually have a request for you. So in the first 6 months of this year, there's been 92 children that have either died or been exposed and recovered from their exposure to drugs.
Mhm.
And there's a bill, it was a bipartisan bill, House Bill 1092. If you could just support that this next year. As I understand it, it fixes a problem in the Keep the Families Together Act. And I'm all for keeping families together, but if somebody is undergoing substance disorder, they're in no shape to be taking care of small children. And I just would appreciate it if you could get on the track to help with that.
Yeah, and we'll be looking at that bill. I know, I saw this morning's paper as well that talked about the tragic deaths around fentanyl. I think one of the things that folks are looking at is how do we save those children? And what we've seen from reports and talking with DCYF, a lot of what the problem is not addressed in that particular bill. And it was not, and actually there was a study done on the Keeping the Families Together bill that is seen as potentially a underlying component to it, and it was not. And so I am all about following the data, and to your point, if 1092 is something that would fix that, 100% support. But what we found when we studied it, and again, that was also addressed in that newspaper article, that was not the underlying, there was not one death that could be attributed to that bill. And so I think what we're saying is the same thing, right? We don't want these children to die. We need to figure out what is actually happening to where families who are not fit to have their children back are getting them. And if it's that bill and if 1092 fixes it, 100% support. But at this point, and I think all of you have seen, we've got some pretty big tort liabilities around not only things like this, but some other issues with DCYF. And my issue right now as a legislator, right, take off every partisan hat, is how do we save children? And when the data comes back and says, this is not what the problem is, I want to get at what the problem is.
Yeah.
So, but if 1092 is what would fix that, but right now, what we've seen as a legislator and policymakers, that is not what's going to help for those 92 deaths, those specific 92 deaths, passing that bill would not have saved those children. But I want to save those children. So we are in 100% agreement. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cavalieri?
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, April. Thanks so much for coming down here and chatting with us. And I also want to talk about fentanyl a little bit. And just to give some background, that in 2022, there were roughly, every day we would lose about 6 to 6.5 people to fentanyl overdose in the state of Washington. And in 2024, that number increased to 9.2. And it's growing, and it's a problem that is spiraling beyond any and all of our controls. But in front of you now is a recommendation from the Washington State Healthcare Authority, which it's an advisory board put together by the legislature, which they've come up with a kind of what I would kind of call a drug dealing scheme, where they recommend introducing a quote, safer supply, end quote, into the population, effectively becoming the middleman as opposed to a drug dealer. They use words like establishing a scalable, safer supply pilot program, meaning giving actual drugs like hydrocodone, fentanyl patches as an alternative to the illicit drug market. And I think if there's anything we learned after Blake, is that you can't legislate your way out of this drug epidemic. And as it gets worse, the last thing I want to do is become another part of the problem. So I'm hoping that you will oppose any such recommendations from this committee. And they may be well-intended, but there's an old saying that says that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And we've gotten it wrong, not just here, but elsewhere. So I'm hoping you'll oppose those recommendations about the state effectively becoming a middleman in the drug business. Thank you.
So I'm assuming that was a question, just so I can clarify the question. So the article that you read was about a committee that was formed that had a recommendation that will then go to another committee that then potentially will write legislation that will be a policy that will potentially go through the committee process, at which point it'll be caucused on, and then I would see it. And at that point, 14 steps out. So the only reason I'm clarifying it is because I read the same article. And I think the article did state some things that were kind of, as a mother, right? I was like clutching my pearls, like, oh my word. And so, but all I've read is a newspaper article, and I've heard your question now. And so I think what I personally as a policymaker would do, I'm not on the healthcare committee. I will absolutely, if there is, which I have not heard of my 97 colleagues, 98 of us are in the House, of my 97 colleagues, I have not had not one say that they wanted to write a bill that we passed into law based on this committee's report. So not one person. So it's really hard. The hypotheticals get into hypotheticals on top of hypotheticals. And again, as a mother, I've gone down that path before. I've got a 29-year-old who got me into some hypotheticals. Next thing you know, I'm saying yes to a prom party. So I just want to make sure that we're talking about the reality. And the reality is, of my 97 colleagues, I have not seen a proposal or heard or seen an email, but I have read the article in the newspaper that you read. And as a mother, I went, oh, that is really, yeah, that's interesting. That is not something that I would have come up with. But as a policymaker, I really cannot say hypothetically what I would do 14 steps out. But thank you for your question.
And I totally get that, but it is something it was proposed in the late short session and the part of this session.
There was no bill. There was absolutely
no.
bill.
I know there was no bill, but this committee is making
yep,
recommendations to the legislative body.
Yep.
And again, so even though it's 14 steps out, let's voice our collective opposition now that this is a bad idea lumped on top of bad ideas.
Just like that prom party.
Mhm.
I should have asked more questions. So just like I would have said to my son back then, I'm going to wait and see, and then we're going to talk about what happens. But again, I read the article, I clutched my pearls as well. And I have not heard one of my colleagues say anything about a policy on it. So hopefully that gets, thank you. But thank you for that question, because that was a good article.
Councilmember Paddock.
Thanks for coming out again, and really appreciate just the consistent updates and availability both to the council and the community. Having that's just fantastic. And I think I've said a number of times here, you're obviously one of the many reasons that, or one of the primary reasons that we get an unfair share here in Mill Creek, and thank you for that. My question, which is actually a question, is around that special ed funding. So it sounds like there's a removal on the cap of the number of kids. Is there also an expansion in the funding for that program? Is it basically, so if the numbers go up for everyone, will the dollars go up as well to fund that?
So yes, and so I think so our caseloads with K-12 education have gone up tremendously, and K-12 education is an entitlement. So by removing that cap, we are now expanding the entitlement. So yes, that entitlement will go up. Now, one of the things that we have looked at and that are being factored in is that there are some districts that have less than what the cap was, and there's some that were more. So it's hard to say at this point where that peanut butter is going to be spread, but but I can say with confidence, our special ed students are going to get more resources tomorrow than they had today. And then we are going to look at those caseloads, but a lot of times, back to the deficit, a lot of our deficit comes from caseloads. Our caseloads are entitlements. So things like K-12, things like our Washington Promise, things like our working family tax credit for our low-income citizens, those are entitlements. So when you qualify for it, you get it. We don't say, are you sure? We don't have the money. We have to provide that. So when our deficits go up, it's not that we're buying necessarily new things. We are simply giving people what they're entitled to. And when you think about an entitlement, there are certain employers, large employers, that when you go in to get a job application or fill out the job application online, you can also fill out an application for food benefits, for SNAP. Because they know by filling out that application at that employer, you will be eligible for food because they will not be paying you enough. That entitlement is the burden of that is the federal government as well as the state government. And when you need those food benefits, because now you've met the work requirement, we know that because you're in that employer, you're going to meet the work requirement and they will not pay you enough to afford food for your family. Now you are entitled to get that food from the state and from the federal government. And so I say that because it's an entitlement. And that's one of the reasons why we're running a deficit, because we do have to provide food and housing and healthcare for all of the great folks in our state.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Representative Berg, for coming in tonight and all the work that you do for us. And thank you for all the work that you do during the session and reaching out to us and advocating for us to have money to go towards our projects. I've got a few questions and things that are on my mind. But first, since Councilmember Paddock has started there, and kind of piggybacking off what you just said, I'm concerned with the cuts from federal dollars, how that's going to affect our children's education. And so I know I'm hearing questions about how it's going to affect the free lunch program here at home. And also concerned about the IEPs that we have. I know Akora even is on an IEP. So we have quite a few people that were already concerned about this before these changes were proposed regarding the IEP. So is there anything that we're thinking about doing in the future? Because I think some of these changes happened after the budget was actually passed for this year. Are we concerned about having money to handle the difference?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you for it. No, we do not have the money. We're not going to get the money. The money that will not be coming from the federal government will impact people both educationally as well as lives. And frankly, people will die. And that's not hyperbole, that's not overstating it. When you take away healthcare and basic food support and housing, people perish. And so as a state, we do not have the money to backfill what we are a donor state to the federal government.
Right.
We give more to the federal government than we get in actual benefits. So the money that we give goes to support states like West Virginia and Arkansas and Mississippi and a lot of other amazing states in this wonderful union that we call the United States of America. But we do not have the money in our coffers to send that money to the federal government as well as backfill for the needs of our state. Now that said, with education, specifically around free and reduced price lunches, that's going to be a pickle. I'm not sure, we have not seen the final numbers. A lot of it that is really concerning me and other policymakers is the uncertainty. So we are getting a lot of different messages about what's coming, when it's coming, it didn't show up. I mean, literally imagine checking your bank account every day and going refresh, and you're like, oh, it's 137 million short. And then you get a note saying, oh, it'll be there tomorrow. I mean, that's literally the situation we're in. And so right now we have been told that 137 million going to OSPI for different supports. And a lot of that money is earmarked for specific classes of students. They are low income students. They are students with English as a second language. They're students who need after school support. A lot of that money we are hitting refresh. They're telling us it's coming. It is not here yet. It should have been here July 1st. When we go into Medicaid, because we have expanded Medicaid and we cover much of our population, that is a $3 billion hit. We do not have that money, and nor should we, because again, we are a donor state. And so at this point, what I will say is a lot of the bigger cuts like Medicaid will not come until after the midterm elections. And so it's not a tomorrow problem, it's a next year problem. I don't know that that makes the problem any better or worse, it's just a fact of time. But what I will say is there is not a parachute. We are a donor state. Our money will continue to go to the federal government. I get some policymakers like, we might hold it back. We're not holding it back. I just can't see a scenario where that happens. We're not coming into special session. We don't have the money to backfill and still send the federal government money to give other states that need those. We need to support other states and their free and reduced price lunches. We need to support states that aren't as wealthy as ours. And I'm happy that we do it, but we also need to support the folks in our state. And at some point, we've got to have complicated conversations with some of our federal partners about what that looks like. So I thank you for your question. I wish I had a better answer, but the answer that I give folks, and I've been to DC twice now to lobby around just the fact that people are going to perish if we do not feed them. I don't think we can be any more clear than that.
Thank you for that answer. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here on this one, but I just want to flag conversations because I know we're having our regional collaboration discussions, our mayor discussions, things like that. And everyone is discussing how the housing is going to be affected, and we're going to have some serious problems with the cuts to housing because we're not going to be able to afford the Section 8, things like that, to put people into housing. So that's a huge problem that we're going to have to deal with coming up, and also food. So for people, so we as communities, we're looking at a moment where we're going to have to come together and figure out how we're going to take care of each other. And so I just want to, I know you're probably hearing it from everyone, but I feel like it still needed to be flagged. Finally, for us, I would just reiterate, it's actually on our legislative agenda, but something else that everyone is talking about in all of our meetings is the increase in the cost of jail services and how much that is taking out of us right now. And so I just want to flag that it is already on our legislative agenda, and we'll discuss it with you. But any funding opportunities that would come up, that comes across your desk to help offset those costs for cities, I think would be much appreciated for all of the cities, because everyone seems to be having the same concerns. So
yeah,
thank you.
No, and thank you. And just to address the first part of it too, so not to be Debbie Downer up here, send me stories. So I am talking with our congressional delegation. So especially stories that are from Mill Creek. If you're hearing things from people, from families around housing, around food insecurity, please send my office stories. We do kind of have a triage situation going around detentions, et cetera. So please, 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 we are talking to the federal delegation. So we are trying to give people hope. We're trying to find people, find loved ones that have been detained. We're trying to give, resources for food and for housing. And of course, as we start the new school year, there's going to be some probably some new federal presence around communities for a variety of reasons that don't seem savory. And so please send my office any stories or anything that we can be helpful with. So I do want to leave you with a little bit of hope. The second piece of it around the jail services, my understanding is with the House bill that we passed around public safety, that is something that you could trigger to pay for those services. A lot of times folks think about jail and criminal justice and DOC as like, oh, this is this punitive thing. I think of it as people, right? Like that's people. My dad used to run he was chairman of Board of Corrections in Cook County in the 80s. That was not a fun job to have. And I say that because I understand that people are there. People need to be paid. They need to be paid a living wage. They need to be kept safe. They need to have the proper equipment. They need to have the proper workplace environment, and that costs money. And so as those costs rise, please understand this is so that we can have safe environments for working folks who are in those facilities, taking care of community and taking care of a part of community that frankly, is helpful to us for folks not to be in community at that point in time, potentially. That said, it is expensive. Costs are going up. Inflation is going up. Everything from eggs on up costs more, which means we need to pay people more, which means our costs for incarceration is going up. You can use that new House bill to pay for some of those costs. I would highly encourage looking at that and other resources that you have in your toolbox to try and offset some of those costs. As a state, we're not going to be able to provide grants or other funding for that, but you can absolutely go to the community and ask them to support these rising costs, which we know are necessary to pay people, have safe working environments, and to take care of our law enforcement folks who are taking care of us. But thank you for that question.
Councilmember Steckler, one more.
Yeah, I just had one more quick question. Talking about the funding. I heard our new Attorney General speak, and he talked a lot about the number of federal lawsuits that he inherited and he's also implemented. And I'm just curious, with all those suits out there, you said some of them, they're going to start settling here over the next few years. But has there been any talk on the Hill about how those dollars might be allocated? Could they be coming to some of these programs that were cut by the feds to help supplement them in our state?
No, so you're talking about the Fed, our AG and the amount of money that it's costing to sue the federal government.
Right.
No,
in the settlements.
in this, oh, the settlement.
talked
So
about
the
the
settlement,
settlement.
so the settlement money, so the first thing, so with settlement money, the first place it goes is the victims. So if you think about settlement money, think of it kind of in two buckets. The first bucket, at least half goes to the victims, right? So when there's a settlement, more than likely there was a victim, there might have been a class of victims, that money goes to help compensate the victims. The other bucket goes into repaying kind of the legal costs, and that money churns into the next case. And so that money continues to protect the people in our state against the next lawsuit.
There is no distribution.
There's not going to be a distribution to local, but I will say with the fentanyl, the opioid settlement, those are coming to communities. If you signed on as a community, that is coming, because in that situation, localities like Mill Creek or city of Snohomish or county of Snohomish, they're victims, right? So think of that as that victim payment that's coming to you. So yes, if you are a victim in a lawsuit, even as a city, you will be getting, recompensed for your pain and suffering. The rest of it goes to churn. And if you've seen our new Attorney General, he does have a button that he has that says, just very bluntly, follow the damn law. Because if people would do that, then we wouldn't have so many suits. And the reason why we win those suits is because people aren't following the law.
April, thank you for coming. I'll wrap it up with a question about tax policy. You referenced the councilmatic tax increase, which I guess it's great that you give cities that authority, but I know from discussions with other mayors, cities are making decisions on the things like that because they don't want to be the one with the highest sales tax in the county. We're already known for having tied with Mukilteo and Linwood, I think, at 10.6%, and its sales tax is the most regressive form of taxes there is. So what is being done, if anything, at the state level to look at tax policy comprehensively to address some of these issues? So, I mean, it's great that you give us that authority, but I'm not sure cities are going to take you up on it.
So that's a great question. And honestly, the entirety of my political career has been spent on tax policy and trying to make it more, I should say, less regressive, more progressive. Progressive is not a caucus orientation. It is the way we should be doing taxes. If you look at a state like Idaho, they have a property tax, they have an income tax, they have a sales tax, they have a business tax. It's not a B&O, but it's a similar tax on businesses. They have a very balanced stool. I mentioned they have an income tax. We do not have an income tax. We do not have a balanced stool. And frankly, as a policymaker, I don't see a world, and I'm not advocating for an income tax, but I am advocating for balance. And I've been doing, if you look at some of my social media, I did a thing with a senator from Arkansas who is from a different party, and they're looking at trying to get rid of the income tax there. And he's worried, because that's going to really unbalance the stool. Things are great when you have a broad base and a low tax rate. That is the best type of tax policy. That is a tax policy I want all day and I've been working towards. Unfortunately, we are not there, and I'm not sure that we'll get there. If we had Idaho's tax policy, we would have $11 billion more in our coffers in our general fund. We have an unbalanced stool that will continue to be more unbalanced. And so as a city, as you're looking at going down a path of a more regressive tax, I can't tell you there's any other option. We're getting to the point where we have to admit that taxes pay for things. They do. They pay for your roads, they pay for your police, they pay for your services, they pay for the lights in this room. There's no way to get around it. And every year those things get more expensive. And every year we want to talk about how we shouldn't pay taxes and no one should pay taxes and they're horrible and unfair. You can make that argument to a point, and I think you have a point about a regressive taxation of sales tax. It's very regressive. You and Bill Gates pay the same tax rate. That's why it's regressive, right? So that is, there's no accounting for the fact that you make 30,000 and Bill Gates makes billions. That it doesn't matter. You both pay the same in our state because you're both buying goods and services that are being taxed the same. That's what makes it regressive. I have not found the secret magic sauce to get us out of that regressive tax code, because people and policymakers do not want to talk about what the real issue is, and that's that we have an unbalanced stool. So until then, you're going to have to make hard decisions as a council about how to fund the services that the city needs. And I wish I could say there was something better, but broad-based, low tax rate, that's the best way to do it. And if we can get there, I will make sure we have the votes to get there. But unfortunately, I think as a community and as a state, folks are very, they don't want to go there.
Yeah, well, thank you again for coming and all you do. And I guess that my final comment is as to the timing of the farm and to Table Center. I'd say to be by a nose in front of light rail to Everett. You can barely beat light rail to Everett. It'll come in first. Thank you, April. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. Enjoy your night. Thank you.
Yep, let's do
Yeah, let's
April,
do a
before you
photo.
run,
You
let's
wanna
do a
do a photo?
photo op.
Is April seeing with us? Is that okay?
Oh, I know, it feels good, doesn't it?
Okay, that brings us to the last two presentations, which are two proclamations. The first is a proclamation regarding National Night Out. This is a proclamation of the city of Mill Creek. Whereas the National Association of Town Watch, NATW, sponsors a national community building campaign on Tuesday, August 5th, 2025, entitled National Night Out. And whereas the National Night Out campaign provides an opportunity for neighbors in Mill Creek to join over 38 million neighbors across 17,000 communities from all 50 states, U.S. territories, and military bases worldwide. And whereas National Night Out is an annual community building campaign that promotes strong police-community partnerships and neighborhood camaraderie to make our neighborhoods safer, more caring places to live and work. And whereas neighbors in Mill Creek assist the local law enforcement agency through joint community building efforts and support National Night Out 2025. And whereas it is important that all neighbors of Mill Creek come together with police and work together to build a safer, more caring community. And now therefore I, Brian Holtzclaw, the mayor of the city of Mill Creek, on behalf of the city council, do hereby call upon all neighbors of Mill Creek to join the Mill Creek Police Department and the National Association of Town Watch in support for National Night Out on Tuesday, August 5th, 2025. Further, let it be proclaimed that Tuesday, August 5th, 2025 is National Night Out in Mill Creek. So this is in a blue folder, so that means we're taking a picture. Another picture.
Good to know the cues.
Yes.
Oh, it is.
Okay, and our last proclamation of the, today is National Disability Independence Day Proclamation. Proclamation of the City of Mill Creek. Whereas National Disability Independence Day on July 26th commemorates the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, in 1990, guaranteeing equal rights, protections, and opportunities for individuals with disabilities. And whereas the Americans with Disabilities Act seeks to ensure that all people, regardless of ability status, are included fully in all aspects in daily life. And whereas even 35 years after the signing of the landmark legislation, people with disabilities and disability justice advocates must continue to work towards a world in which ableism does not create barriers which impede individuals from participating fully in and enjoying all that our community has to offer. And whereas the anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act is celebrated as National Disability Independence Day and offers an opportunity to recognize the contributions of people with disabilities to the rich tapestry that is our community. And whereas we can work together to reduce barriers such as financial constraints, access to transportation, and provide education on various resources to allow all individuals to enjoy recreation activities safely and freely, regardless of their abilities. Now therefore, I, Brian Holtzclaw, the mayor of the city of Mill Creek, on behalf of the city council, do hereby proclaim July 26, 2025 as National Disability Independence Day in the city of Mill Creek. Signed this 22nd day of July, 2025. Okay, we have no old business tonight, which brings us to our new business. The first item being the ordinance related to citywide catch basin repair project. Mr. Carmody.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, staff. I'm here tonight to discuss the current, the current status of our catch basin repair. You may have noticed on the agenda that Mr. Hobday was supposed to be here, but he is on vacation, so he sends his regards. The goal of this presentation is to inform you on the status of the city's catch basin system, a schedule for the required repairs and an estimated cost, and possible funding sources for this action. First, the legal requirements behind our storm drainage system. As you know, we are covered by the 2024 Western Washington Phase 2 Municipal Surface Water Permit. This allows us to discharge our surface water that we collect from our roadways and other places throughout the city into these waters of the state. The city has worked with the Department of Ecology to resolve many non-compliances over the last year, which we have successfully done and gotten to an agreed order with them. One of the requirements that we were required to address requires that all catch basins be inspected every 2 years. So this is an ongoing program that we will have forever, that we have to inspect all of our catch basins every 2 years. Usually we'll split them in half, address half every year. When we do the inspections, another one dictates the required repair schedules. So if we perform the maintenance in-house with our own staffs, we are required to repair the catch basins within 6 months. If we lump them together in a larger capital project, then that timeline gets extended to 2 years. The current status of our catch basin system. So our maintenance standard is based on our currently adopted 2019 Stormwater Management Manual for Western Washington. This goes through every piece of the storm drainage system and says, here is the maintenance standard, here is the requirement, and here's what you're looking for it. So it'd be something like, there are holes bigger than 2 inches in the top slab of a catch basin. If that's found, then that is a problem and that must be fixed. And then it says how you go about fixing it as well. So here's just a zoom in on what we see. And so, some of the things we have, like cracks wider than 1/4 inch, or the structure unsound for the overall structure. If the grate is missing or broken, or those kinds of items. So the highlighted portions of this are some of the things that we found as we went through the city. Oh, it's because somebody was moving the mouse. There we go, got it, okay. To make things easier, okay. So as I go through here, I want to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about when I talk about the parts of a catch basin. So first off, on the top, this is what you see on the roadway. It's the frame and grate. So it's a cast iron frame with a cast iron grate in top. So that's the top part that you see. Beneath that is a riser. These are typically 2 to 8 inches tall square or rectangles or rings of concrete that you put up, and they're used to adjust the grate to the road grade. So that way it gives a nice flat drive as it goes across it. You have 2 pipes that actually interact with the catch basin, the inflow pipe and the outlet pipe. So the inflow goes in, the outlet goes out. These, typically the way that they're constructed is there's a knockout in the side of a catch basin where it's a thinner part of the concrete that you cut out around the pipe, stick the pipe in, and then you grout it to seal the catch basin there. And then the bottom of the catch basin is called the sump. That is a box or a solid piece that then is watertight. So there are also 2 types of catch basins that we talk about. These definitions actually come from WashShot. So a type 1 catch basin, that is the rectangular grates that you see at the side of the road. These ones are all square. They are anywhere from 2 to 5 feet deep, and that's it. That's how big they are. The larger ones are type 2 catch basins. These also are called manholes. So these are the sewer manholes you think about, the round grates. They can also have the square grates as well, but they're typically deeper and they handle larger pipes. A type 1 catch basin can typically handle up to a 15-inch pipe, whereas a type 2 can handle a much, much, much larger pipe. So as we open it up and look down a catch basin, this is what we usually see. This was actually a pretty good example of a type 1 catch basin. So the grate, it's level with the roadway, it's not sunken in. The riser and the sump, there's very minimal to no cracking. And the pipes have a solid connection to the structure. So, I mean, you can see the sump here, there's no issues with it. You can see the pipe right here. You can even see some of the mortar around the edge, the frame, and the grate look good. So overall, this actually looks like a good catch basin. Similarly, this is a type 2 catch basin. So as we look down, you can see it has a good frame, has a good grate. You can see the risers around the edge, and then you can see down below into the belly of the catch basin that also is in good condition. So we did the inspections, sat down and decided how do we want to classify these? How do we want to figure out how we're going to go through these and create a program to fix them? What we found is that there were 6 main issues. A full sump replacement, which means you have to remove the entire catch basin and replace it. Riser replacement, which means it's not the sump, but it's one of the risers above it. Those need to be replaced. So you have to go all the way down to the broken riser and replace everything above that. Regrouting of the pipes. So if the side of the catch basin is broken enough and the grout is falling off, you have to regrout around there. Sometimes the problem with the riser is minor enough that you're able to just go in, cut a section out and replace it. That's called a riser cut and mortar. One of the easiest things to fix actually is mortar on cracking. So that's basically if there's a crack that's too wide, you take mortar and you work it into the crack and just make sure that it's covered up. The other one that we found that was more surprising, and I'll show you examples of all of these, that we didn't really anticipate is PVC sleeves. So we've found a lot of people who have connected to our catch basins that we didn't really know about. So homeowners, other people, all that kind of stuff. We can't track all of them right now. It's a much longer problem. So we're not going to destroy these homeowners' potential drainage and maybe flood their houses. So what we're going to do is we're going to provide a sleeve for their connection to go back through to provide a better structural support. Because what they did is they basically cut out some of the frame. So this one, for instance, has several issues, as you can see. The grate in the frame, there's cracking on the grate. The riser, there's significant cracking throughout the riser. The pipes, it has moved out of the structure and needs to be regrouted. There's also exposed rebar here. That means that your entire structure has failed. If the rebar is exposed, that's going to cause the entire structure to fail. Full sump replacements. So as the one on the left, you can see, the entire sump is broken. This is quite the impressive patch job that's on the pipe here. And the one on the right, you can't tell, but this entire center part is missing. It is broken out and is actually, the rod there is going below the bottom of the catch basin. Riser repair and replacement. So this is what we found on a lot of places. These risers have degraded to the point that they are basically going to cause the failure of these catch basins within a few years. So we have to take these completely off, replace the risers, and replace the frame and grate and the roadway around it. So for these ones, you can see the pipes here. This one, the grout's completely gone. And then this one over here, you could see that it has cracked and it's also weathering off. So both those ones, we need to regrout the pipe. So put more grout on the pipe to completely seal it in. These are examples of cut and mortar. So as you can see, this side is completely fine. There's a little problem with this one right here. So what we can have our crews do is cut into it, remove that, and put mortar or another piece of concrete back in there and mortar that in. So that will restore most of the functionality of that. And the same thing with this one, where you can actually see that bricks were installed as part of this. Mortar on cracking. So as you can see, there's some very impressive cracks that go through these catch basins here. And what we would do with these are not big enough to warrant any further fixes, but we just need to mortar over everything to prevent the water from getting into there and causing the cracks to get larger. And then this is the PVC collars. So I mean, as you can see, people have brought in these pipes very high up into our catch basins. And I don't know whether or not they've been permitted or anything like that, but for now, we are going to, as we replace this, provide a slightly larger PVC pipe for those to go through. And that will provide better structural support for the catch basin around it.
Is that a sidewalk behind there? I'm just trying to
I believe
figure.
this is a curb. This right here, I think, is a curb, and this is asphalt.
How would someone do that without tearing up part of the roadway? I mean, it's not like,
Sometimes it's, I mean, sometimes if this is a curb, they could have dug down behind the curb, done that and put it back. They could have gone under the sidewalk. They could have torn out the sidewalk to replace the sidewalk. Most of the time when you see this, it's typically something associated with landscaping. So the outcomes of our review. We did the 2-year contract. The first round of inspections were completed on November 5th, 2024. This focused on lower traffic roads. This one focused primarily on the neighborhoods. We inspected 3,128 catch basins and found 731 with construction-related issues we must address. The second round of inspections was completed on June 10th, 2025. These ones were the higher traffic roadways, including our state highways, where we are responsible for the storm drainage within the highways. We inspected 561 catch basins, which with 285 requiring some kind of issue to be addressed. In total, we found 1,016 catch basins out of 3,689 that the city owns and controls within the right-of-way that are out of compliance. This is 27.5% of our catch basins. To put this in perspective, most places would have 20 to 30 a year that they would need to address in some way.
Were they concentrated in particular areas or they spread out
Spread out
evenly
throughout
throughout
the
the
entire
city?
city.
So we can't blame it on the county.
No,
Is it just now that we're mandated to look for them? Is that
we were
kind
out
of?
of compliance in inspecting them, and we have just gotten back into compliance on inspections. And so now we're finding that there are these major problems.
Councilmember Duque?
It was the reminder of when was the last time we did an inspection like this, or that we have, or that you were able to see a record of anyone looking at these, or even repairs for any of the stuff?
I have not been able to find any records of catch basin inspections. We have pipe inspections going back to 2012. I have not seen anything older than that.
Let me chime in. So I think when they went in the past, they went in and looked at those pipes, they would have seen the broken one along the way. And there's some of those, there's some old records that show a few of them were fixed, but they didn't go comprehensively and look at all of them. So this is the comprehensive requirement.
Right, so this is, if we're, yeah, exactly, it's that many years of work. I think that's what's really important for us as council members as we talk to constituents of the, questions, or as we're just talking about what a city does, right?
Yes,
This is
this is 40 years worth of work.
Deferred maintenance.
Yep, this is when we always talk about deferred maintenance, like this can be the image that pops up in
Yes.
our internal dictionary of
Exactly.
what that means and the amount of time. Thank you very much.
So, as I mentioned earlier, the repair schedule is dictated by our phase 2 permit. Due to the quantity of these repairs, we're gonna do it as a capital project. That gives us 2 years to repair these. Group 1 will be due November 24th, 2026, and group 2 is due June 10th, 2027. So for a cost estimate, we did a rough estimate for these. Group 1 will cost about $2.5 million, and group 2 will cost approximately $2 million. This is because group 2 is more expensive because there is more extensive traffic control that is required, because we're gonna have to shut down lanes on highways. And because of that, we'll probably have to do night work for the majority of group 2. So that's gonna be a higher labor cost. So that is why group 2, even though it is a third of the group 1, its cost is about the same. Funding. In order to progress with this, we'll need to free up funding immediately. This year, we're going to try to get as many done as possible. So I would like to have about $1.5 million available for that. 2026, we will try to address everything that is left over from this year and get group 2 done in 2026 if possible. There may be some that extend into 2027. Those ones will be an additional $500,000 in 2027. To provide funding for this, we went ahead and revised the capital plan first for this biennium, because maintenance items do come out of the overall surface water utility budget. So we can defer capital in order to perform maintenance in that budget. The South Town Center master drainage upgrade, that is deferred with the surface water portion beginning in 2027. Nickel Creek Fish Passage also would be deferred with that budget coming in as well. So that's $900,000 between those two. Note that when I say that those are deferred, we will actually be beginning those projects next year anyway, because they are also transportation projects. So they have companion projects in the Transportation Capital Fund 318. So we will be able to begin the projects under those ones and then catch up with utility funding along the way. The citywide catch basin repair project, that's the new one that we're discussing tonight. That is $4.54 million in the proposed budget. The storm pipe rehabilitation work plan update. The original budget for that was $100,000 in this biennium. We're upping that to $1 million. The reason for that is, first off, the first section of them was approved by council at the last meeting as the 18-inch plus storm pipe inspection project, where we mentioned that the budget amendment would be coming later. Well, this is later. So The thing is that that project only addresses about a third of our 18-inch plus pipes within the city, just about 24,000 linear feet. So we're gonna have to extend that over 3 years. So we'll need about $500,000 a year over 3 years to inspect these pipes. However, the actual pipe rehabilitation program is being deferred to 2028. The reason we're doing that is because the pipe rehabilitation program was what we called Grade C. And as we were prepping to get the Grade C out this year, we realized we were done. So a work plan was prepared in 2017, right? In 2017, the original like Grade F, Grade C work plan was prepared, and we finished it last year. So we didn't have anything else to progress on that. So we can free up those funds for other stormwater related items until we prepare the new work plan. And then I just had other projects in there. Those are other projects that are ongoing, things like Sweetwater Ranch or the Highway 96 closeout, those kinds of items that are going to stay in the budget and they're not changing. So the total capital budget will go from the current approved $5,005,000 to a proposed $7,125,000.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Does the surface utility water fund, does this fund this 100%?
I was going to get that in 2 slides, but yes, we do currently have enough in our reserves to fund this from the surface water utility.
Okay, just one sec. Councilmember Steckler.
So you're not gonna need an additional 2 million?
Oh, we need 2 million.
Okay, so.
Okay.
So my question was, I noticed that you deferred a number of projects before, when you get to other projects, so the balance of your CIPs, you didn't defer any of those. Is there any reason why you didn't? Could we defer some of those?
So as I mentioned, those projects, one of them is the Highway 96 storm pipe repair, which is done. So that's still on our biennium budget, but we've already paid out the majority of the funds on that. So that one's completed.
So you won't, that was counted in the 2.175?
Yes.
So it's
the
already
other
been.
one is the Sweetwater Ranch project, which we have deferred from this year to next year for construction because we did not get permits from the federal government in time to perform construction in this dry season.
I'm probably being not clear. We had 2.175 budgeted for these other projects. One of them you just mentioned, we already paid off and finished. So we could deduct that from the 2.175, couldn't we?
The reason I'm including the 2.175 in this is, or including that project already in there, is because that's how it's going to read in the capital improvement plan. Because the capital improvement plan goes for all of 2025 through 2030. Because that project was done in 2025 and we've already amended it to add it to the CIP.
I understand.
I'm going to maintain that one within there.
So between Sweetwater and the other one, were there any other projects in there that could be deferred?
No.
Okay.
We looked through there and there are no other projects that could be deferred in this biennium.
Just to be clear, when you we have budget up there, this is the projected cost. This isn't the funding.
Correct. Would you like me to continue?
Please.
While I was in there tinkering around with the surface water budget and also to help Finance Director Lombard with a 6-year projection, which we'll come back to present to council later, I went ahead and updated the rest of the CIP for the surface water. So this one is what happened is I removed most of the placeholder projects that were in there with the projects that were identified in the SMAP. So that way we have exact projects with actual estimates on them that we can then include in our future CIP. These are anticipated to begin in 2027, last through 2029, and then I added another surface water placeholder for 2029 to 2030. That way we could plan for the actual costs for the surface water fund. So the 401 Surface Water Utility Fund currently approved for this biennium is $8,453,841. The proposed changes to address the catch basin repair issues is $10,663,841. This is an increase of $2,210,000. Based on our current projections, the fund will have $1,116,384 at the end of the biennium. So staff is currently evaluating options for the future because that actually drops us pretty low on our reserves. So we want to look at the way that we can stabilize the 401 fund, as well as plan for the future and future capital projects and future emergencies, all that kind of stuff, to look at the fund as more of a utility, more of the utility that it is. We are looking at options for this that include an increase of the surface water utility rates, one-time assessment, borrowing funds, or more likely than not, a combination of the three. So Public Works is working very closely with finance on preparing estimates and projections for these, and we anticipate bringing these back to you in the fall for your review and approval to address any future shortcomings in the fund. So for the upcoming schedule for the rest of this project or this year, we actually issued an advertisement for an engineer to help us get the specifications and contract drafted for this, because this is a maintenance action, but it's so big that we have to follow capital project rules. So we're getting an engineer on board to prepare the required bid documents. So we can actually send this out to a full bid. Today's date, the 22nd, is hopefully a budget amendment to provide funding for this. We'll give notice to proceed on the engineer on August 8th. And then hopefully we will have everything ready to issue an invitation to bid for the contractors on the 29th. Do a quick turnaround on that. Notice to proceed in construction on September 12th. And they will get through as many as they can in September because wet weather season starts on September 30th. So beyond that, we cannot really work in our surface water system because it just gets too wet. And then we'll come back to you in October with options for future funding. Are there any questions?
Councilmember Cavalieri.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have a map handy of where the bulk of these are? I know you said they're not generally in one location, but
They are. I don't have a map handy. We have one prepared, and I can give you a link to it if you'd like. It's a GIS map, but they are spread throughout the city. Like there is no specific neighborhood, no specific group, no specific area that is that they're concentrated in.
and the only reason I bring that up is I know we're in conversations about the projects in Dobson Remlard and church properties and whatnot, and the potential creation of a taxing district there. So theoretically, if there were a large bulk of these projects along Bothell Everett Highway, let's say, where the boundary would be drawn, this would fit the criteria, would be my guess, or a lot of the costs covered.
I can't speak to the creation of tax improvement districts. That's not my area of expertise.
I think remember, this is the 401 fund. It's to our advantage to keep this as a utility fund, and something we might do for transportation or parks or facilities would be in different funding.
I'm not sure there's a taxing district like a park district that's available for surface water like
That would cook.
Yeah, what we're saying back here, it is a utility. So just like the water and sewer guys get to have, say, set a fee to deal with their utility. We're in the utility business here. One of the things we've kind of forgotten over the years, but that's why we're talking about, you could change the rates. You could have some different kind of special assessments. Maybe you borrow somebody to spread it out, but fundamentally you want to keep all the money that comes in for surface water is paying for these things in surface water, and you don't want to mix the two.
Right, I agree, and we've neglected it for so long now that the pipers come calling. So here we are with the giant bill at the end of the 2030. So creatively, I'm trying to look for ways to come up with $2 million is, I guess, the nice way of saying it.
Yes, and I understand that. And if you have any thoughts of ways that you'd like us to look into, because we will be working with finance department to put together options for funding this in the future.
Well, aren't we gonna need to do another rate study? Because when we set up the surface water fee, it was based on looking at the pipe replacement projects. We now have an entirely new set of issues to deal with that we need to reassess.
Yes, and that is why I did the 6-year projection for capital. We've
Yeah.
also done a 6-year projection for maintenance and other services throughout the city for this. And so based on that, we're working with finance to put together a overall amount.
Councilmember Ellison?
Yes, thank you for the report. Couple of questions. SMAP, can you,
Oh, sorry,
Remind
Surface
us.
Water Master Action Plan.
Thank
That's the plan that we put together and did a study of the Mill Creek Basin.
yes, and so we've already had approval to have a certain amount of time to deal with the things you find, right?
Yes, in general, we're supposed to address as many of those by the end of 2029, I believe,
Okay,
which is
Okay.
why I scheduled them for 27 through 29.
right, okay. And then kind of a maybe a related question, but I'm not sure. As I'm driving south on Bothell Everett Highway, right-hand lane
Mhm.
between 132nd, that corner,
Mhm.
and Dumas, there's several
Yep.
things that are looking more like potholes.
Exactly. We know about that. We are getting a final scope on that. We'll get some transportation plans put together or some traffic control plans put together and get repairs on that as soon as we can.
Thank you.
We know of that, and that is a major fire that we're looking at right now.
Yes, I straddle them with my car every day.
Councilmember Paddock?
It may just be me, but I'm a little nervous about what's gonna come in the next version of what you'll come back with on the next 2 to 4 to 6 years. I might be the only one that's a little bit nervous about approving something now, not knowing what the bigger stick might look like. I don't know if we can wait based on what you just described as far as the funding goes, but that does kind of, I would say for me, that puts me in a little bit of a quandary, like, hey, we gotta pay for this now, but a lot more is coming. I kind of feel like I'm under the gun a little bit.
I understand that, and I do empathize with that. I've been feeling the same way. The gun is being held by ecology, so to speak. They, sorry,
We get them in.
I know, right? They require as part of the permit that we repair these within 2 years of discovery. And so as soon as we know that there's a problem, we're on the clock. Ideally, we would be able to handle these in-house and have a crew large enough and skilled, well, not skilled enough, but large enough to be able to dedicate the time to repair these items. Because we're dealing with a severe maintenance deficit throughout the history of the city, we are now getting back, and it's time, as Councilmember Cavallari said, to pay the piper. I mean, this is where we've got our hand slapped by ecology, saying that we haven't done our inspections. So we've gone and done our inspections, found our problems, and now we have to lie in our bed to mix a whole bunch of metaphors. So as I mentioned, we are going in the next, hopefully the catch basins, this will be the big slug of them. This is all of our catch basins. So we've seen them all. We know what's going on with them. The thing I'm a little more nervous about in the future is the pipes. There are pipes that were not included in the last round of 18-inch plus inspections with grade C for the grade C program. And so I'm concerned about what we're going to find with those. So that, however, we don't have a timeline for yet. We're not anticipating having a forced timeline on those until 2029. So that's why we are getting ahead of the inspections on those, just so that we can know what's out there and provide a longer timeline for us to address them.
But just to clarify, what we're being asked tonight, we're amending the CIP to add this project over the next 6 years for 4.5 million bucks, but we're only amending the budget to fund 2.21 million of it between this year and next year.
So to be clear, we are amending the CIP to put this project in, which lasts between 2025 and 2027. This project is only for 3 years. We have to have everything done in 2027. The funding for the entire project is $4.5 million. I was able to get 2.3 out of the other capital projects, and the other 2.2 needs to come from a budget amendment.
Okay, so that's the the moving the projects around to take current dollars. Okay, so it is fully funded, but we only need to change the budget for 2.21 million of it.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Councilmember Steckler?
Okay, my understanding, 4.4.
4.5.
4.5, you found 2 point,
Three.
2.3, sorry, the slides, I forget already. So we're looking at 2.1, but that money will not be until 2027.
No,
No,
that
because
money is part of this biennium, so it is
This
part of our
biennium.
current budget.
I thought if you found 2.1.
Right, and we need 4.5 for, by June, by the end of June 2027.
Seven.
We want to see the slide again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is kind of. So my question was, if you found half of the money in this biennium, this will affect the 2027.
We'll most likely only need about $500,000 in 2027. So that is why we just need to fund
Wow.
this entirely. The majority of the actual construction work will be done in 2025 and 2026, primarily 2026 now, because we need dry weather work.
Yeah.
So the big costs are going to be done during the dry weather work of 2026. The problem is 2027 is due by June 10th. And so we won't have much time in dry weather to be able to work in 2027.
Okay, but you're only going to have what you said, like half a month in September of 2025 to work.
Right.
So now you've got dry weather 2026.
That's pretty much it.
How much can you actually get done?
That's up to our contractor. We're going to give them a performance contract. They have to get it done within our schedule.
So you intend to do roughly 3.5 million in the dry weather of 2026? Is that
That's
realistic?
entirely possible. It has to be realistic. That's the
Or
thing.
could more be moved over to 2027?
We cannot. We
Because you're
have to
you're only
get-
moving
we have
about
to get-
500,000 in 2027.
We have until November 24th, 2026 to get 738 of them done. So group one has to be done November 24th, 2026. So that part includes 731 with issues. It was what, 106 sump replacements, 182 riders or replacements. So all of those ones will involve paving. And then 443 other repairs. So that has to be done by November 2026. The group two ones, which are in bigger roads, those ones have to be done by June 10th of 2027. So that's only 285. I was thinking about how I was going to talk about this, not how I was going to go back and talk to you about it again. Sorry, it's on different slides.
So I guess the big question is, realistically, can we do 4.7 million or 4.3 million, or whatever the number is, within just those dry weather months of 2026? That's a lot of work in a short period of time.
It is. And
That's a ripping up of a lot of roads. It's
we're going to get as much as we can done. And if we cannot get it done, we are hoping that we have shown that we're in the good graces of ecology and they will give us leniency. But if we don't, and we're not in their good graces, there's a chance that we can get fined.
So I guess my thought was, if we project, here's where I'm going with all this. If we project all this work to be done in 2026, that means we're going to have to do a budget amendment. And we're going to have to find these additional funds, either because we don't have them right now, the whole 4.something million.
There is
We've only
enough
found
within
2.1.
there is enough within our current reserves to fund all of this.
Yeah, but that would take us to zero reserves, which is.
No, it would take us to
I thought we had a million.
1.1 million.
Biggest down.
If we spend the additional,
Mhm.
the entire
The
budget
fund, the 401 fund will have 1.1 million at the end of 2026.
with an additional, roughly 700,000 to go.
more
Right?
or less.
No,
Yes.
Depending on
For 2027.
If we can get it done in 2026, we want to get it done in 2026.
no, the 1.1 million is if when you complete all 4.5 million.
Correct.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is what it is, yes.
Okay, because you said the end of the biennium, that's the end of that's
It's the end of
2026.
2026, yes.
So, but you're gonna have another 700,000 you
If
said
we
to
need
do.
to. If we need to, if we don't get everything done in 2026, it will roll over to the spring of 2027, which is why I said there was $500,000 there. However, we should have the entire budget ready to go in this biennium so that if our contractors can get everything done, they get everything done.
So that 500 grand also, if we don't get it done, also rolls over.
Correct.
So that would add to the 1.116.
Correct.
But what we don't know is if that's even realistic to do that much repair work in that short a period of time.
We are going to make that a condition of the work. and it is up to the contractors to complete that.
But is it something we want to do? Would it just, how much havoc would that play on our streets to do that much?
We don't have a choice.
Well, no, you do. You have it till 2020. Pardon me, 20, you have the dry weather of 2027, correct?
We don't
June
have,
10th?
we only have maybe 2 weeks of dry weather.
When does the dry season technically begin from a
Okay,
public
so I
works
think we have
standpoint?
5 weeks of dry weather because it starts at the beginning of May.
Okay.
Right.
So there's not really any dry weather we can do in 2027. I don't want to have to bank on that. Because we all know that May isn't necessarily dry.
So the 500,000 you want to do in 2027 on this plan is
Is
not-
included in this budget amendment.
okay, but it's not really what you want to do. You want to do it all in 2026.
Correct.
Even though you're
It's just,
saying-
I was planning that out just in case it needed to
That's
happen.
right. You understand why it's getting confusing? You're saying you said, originally said in this plan, 700,000 would be done in 2027.
500,000 in 2020.
500,000 on this presentation will be done in 2027. So you're not saying you want to do it all in 2026 is your goal?
Yes.
Okay.
We would like to finish this project early and under budget.
Councilmember Cav,
What it should show.
Councilmember Cavallari.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm going to support this. And again, I understand Councilmember Paddock's consternation with this because it's everybody's that, you know, when ecology puts these rules in place, we're forced to live by them. And it's not, are you going to get it done? It's when are you going to get it done? So here we are looking to find, I think you've created an appropriate funding mechanism here as it stands now. So I'll happily support it and I'll happily make a motion. Move to adopt an ordinance amending the 2025-2030 capital improvement plan to add the citywide catch basin repair project SW 00003, amending the 2025-26 biennium budget by appropriating 2.21 million from the Surface Water Utility Fund and establishing an effective date.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carmody. And now to our main event.
Look, the lights just went down too for you.
Are you ready to rumble?
Dramatic effect. All right. Okay, so, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, Director Ryan here to talk about the DRCC. You know, I'm really hyped about the DRCC. I think we're at a tremendous point in the project. I think we're ready to pivot and kind of get this thing back on track and back and progressing. And I've been looking forward to this conversation for some time now. So without further ado, so what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be going through the current state of our DRCC development, just like we did before. We'll talk about project constraints, review best available site uses, and then report a path forward. On the agenda, I'm gonna give you a background real quick, just some quick history, so maybe some new history for some folks in the room. We'll be talking about doing the size and cost analysis that was requested a while back. We'll be looking at the city asset valuations. We finally got that back, part of the South Consent. We'll get into that, but we do have some estimated sale values for some city-owned assets. Talking about concepts for developments, and then hopefully we'll have some constructive and good conversation on our path on what to do, and then we'll chart our path forward. So the last time I presented the DRCC, I asked you all to close your eyes and just kind of ask yourselves an important question of where should the heart of our community be? And that's really kind of a fundamental theme that we'll be returning through this presentation and through this discussion. Just a quick history, I went through this before. DRCC, really this thing should go all the way back to 2008, 2005, right, Mike? Where's our city historian? It goes back a long time from long time ago. DRCC is almost a vote now, and we are, and it's kind of had some, in the last 5 years, it's had some starts and stops. There's been some stop fire annexations, COVID, all sorts of things happen, but we're here and we're ready to make progress. One thing I think is really important, you know, is throughout this whole process, there's really been a consistent vision of 4 things that councils consistently return to. And that's, it has to serve a community need. That's the low hanging fruit, right? It has to create recreational opportunities. We have to create gathering and event spaces. And then also it has to be fiscally neutral, positive, or at least that was the goal, is that it's fiscally neutral, positive. However, throughout this process, there's been changing circumstances throughout the process. You know, COVID and annexation delayed and shifted priorities. Public works yard facilities kind of became more urgent, and that kind of came up in how we thought about assets. The Southtown Center redevelopment process began, and that's really opening some real alignment opportunities in how we think about assets and financing and stuff like that. And then also there's also maybe uncertain state and federal financial support. Some of the grants that we assumed were there maybe aren't there as much as at the level that we thought they were. And so it's just the circumstances have changed a little bit on this. As a reminder, this is the roadmap I presented y'all at the beginning of the summer that we will wait for the Southtown Center analysis and our consultant to complete their market valuations for the City Hall sites and DRC sites. Hopefully today we'll choose a path and we'll commit to a road forward. September, we'll be putting out an RFQ using federal guidelines, because certainly if there are federal dollars, we want them. And that'll be used for schematic planning and engagement and master planning. And then from fall through spring, assuming everything goes right, we find a consultant, we find a path, we get on track with the budget, we can go through a master planning process, and hopefully by next year, we can complete the master plan, we can go out to bid potentially. That's exciting that there is a road forward on this. Funding for this. So I worked closely with Director Lumbat, I worked closely with city engineer, with Laurel, and the team came together and tried to develop the best way to finance this. Last time I reported this, I talked about this budgeting issue where we had in the past assumed that planning work had been done for this, but then we didn't really. But now we've been able to find necessary funding that we can do this through here. We have about maybe $450,000 for master plan that we can use to complete this project. We probably don't need to use all that money, but we'll go into kind of ways to think about that. But the point of this slide is that we have evaluated budgeting opportunities to pay for the completed master planning of this project. As a reminder, we have done some work on this, right? We've done a wetland delineation, we've done a community engagement plan, needs assessment, site surveys, about 75 grand worth of work. There's still a lot of work left. Potentially final community visioning and program. That part I should have put optional in the PowerPoint. My apologies for the error. Because that really depends a little bit on what we decide tonight. Kind of how we decide on a path could change how we write the scope of work, and there could be savings found by not having to do some working with a consultant to select a concept. But we'll need to go over the schematic site planning, preliminary engineering, preliminary permitting strategy, and then a phase construction plans. And potentially we can explore a private partnership feasibility plan. You might see that one and be like, hey, that's new, what is that? We'll get into that in the future slides. So, there could be, depending on what you decide, between $125,000 or $300,000 worth of planning activities associated with this. To move forward, so what we need to do with that, what my ultimate goal for tonight is to kind of get to slap table as a group on how we want to move forward, what kind of concept we want to go with. We don't have to go into specific site program. We don't have to go into specific partners. We don't have to go into specific use cases or anything like that. We just have to decide on a concept. So I know how to write my scope of work for an RFQ so we can get this project back on track and under contract. Again, going back to the roadmap, this is exactly what I said. The objective of this is just to agree generally on the general direction we'd like to go. And then, again, just try to get to an RFQ and try to get under contract. So just a reminder, size and cost analysis. This is one of the things that you all requested from me. So the DRCC is 18-acre site, but as you can see by the reds and oranges, maybe not all of that is developable. We assessed that if we include the developable area with slope and some of the wetlands that we were cleared by Army Corps of Engineers, about 8.3 acres of this site are developable. Might be a little bit more, might be a little less. This is just ballpark estimates. But about 8.3 acres is developable in this area. So why size and cost matter? Like I said, changing financial climate. Maybe once we start looking at the size of these facilities and the cost, it might, cause us to maybe think about, all right, well, we've dreamed big, but let's think about, how is this actually going to work, maybe fiscally. And then also, because recognizing that reality of the size and cost of these facilities, there's also a really tremendous opportunity for us, right? We're looking at our city-owned assets. We're looking at, is there different ways that we can think creatively about using what we have, different funding mechanisms or approaches. And then also, of course, deciding, depending on what concept we go with, would also maybe inform how we approach the issue of debt. This isn't intended to be a scary series of slides to intimidate in one way or the other, but rather just, I think it's important that as we talk about these different concepts, that there are certain size requirements and cost requirements, and that may play an important role in how we think about the future. So community center programming. I will note that, so what I tried to do is I tried to review all of our previous conversations and stuff like that. So I went out, for example, an auditorium. Auditorium for me is also a theater space. Because when I think of auditorium, I think about a fly house. I think about the wings of each of the theater and stuff like that, and seating. So that's factored into this as well. So that's probably, those are typically for a city of our size between 6,000 and 8,000 square feet just for the auditorium theater space, or it could be an event space. You probably need 3,000 to 5,000 square feet for flexible classrooms. And once you factor in the move-in studios, commercial kitchen, if you're doing event space, a lot of times these facilities will have a kitchen because, you gotta have catering. There's also lobby and reception and gallery area and administrative support. So based on these requirements, you probably need about between a 15,000 and 22,000 square foot community facility to accommodate everything we've talked about. Less like athletic facilities, like a basketball courts or anything like that. This is just the city component of this, of what we would probably be operating. This is roughly in line with what the International City and County Management Association's guidelines are for the approximate square footage required for a community facility. This is also roughly in line with the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office, as well as the National Recreation and Park Association. All of them recommend between 1 and 1.5 per square feet per capita. So once you kind of do the math, that's more or less about the same size facility that we would be needing.
Can I dive off here for a sec?
Yes,
Do you
sir.
happen to know what the average square footage is of a boys and girls club space? Just, I'll tell you why later, but.
I imagine with basketball courts and stuff like that, it's probably well north of 10,000 square feet.
I believe Mrs. Akala said it was 15 to 18,000 square feet, including the gymnasium / auditorium space.
Thank you.
So once you start looking at these different square footages and things along those lines for some of these, just these community purposes, not what would be potentially done by a third party partner that could defray costs or add costs or something like that. If you're just looking at the square footage of these different, just the potentially city-run facilities, we're looking at shooting the difference between these two around 18,000 square feet, which could range between a low and a medium cost estimate between $9.3 and $17 million. Also, because of this conversation is maybe we're looking at our assets and looking at City Hall North and South, and maybe there's some, we could move City Hall, for example. We went ahead and assessed what a City Hall facility would be needed, assuming City of Mill Creek currently has about one full-time employment position per 300 residents. So if you use that ratio and extrapolate out, maybe 200 square feet per employee, and you include stuff like a council chambers, public reception area, all that stuff. For a city of 20,000, you need about 2,800 square feet. And then that number, of course, goes up as the city grows. You would potentially need a greater and larger city hall size.
Jeff, do you remember what our projected 2044 population?
Our projected 2044 population, I do not recall at the top of my head.
24, 25, and then
25,000.
It was barely under 25,000.
Yeah. So once you start penciling this out with the different square footage sizes and stuff like that, you're talking between 24,000 square foot for a city hall structure, or between 10 and 19. So about between 10 and $20 million. All right, so now we got a kind of sense of, if we were just for the city of Mill Creek size as we are now, what kind of facilities have been talked about just on the community side, right? Not thinking about the third party size requirements, what kind of structure would need to be done with that. Because I feel like that's part of a conversation that's important, but not important for at least getting to the RFQ and getting to the scope of work. So it's important to kind of recognize, like, all right, well, maybe this is going to require us to think about how we can leverage city-owned assets. So part of the scope of work for the South Town Center was we worked with our economic analysis firm to review City Hall North and South and review the DRCC properties and comp it with some regional sales for other mixed-use developments, and trying to figure out what the gross buildable area cost was, sale price was, and try to see, all right, well, can we maybe get an estimate of what we could maybe get for our own city-owned assets here. What we found is for the DRCC, your lower range estimate using the current community CB zone, it's right now zoned for community business. If it was developed using that zone for a mix, it would potentially net 22.1 million. And then if it were to be rezoned as something else to allow more residential or something like that, that property, the DRCC properties could potentially be sold for about $30 million. So that's $30 million in assets that potentially could be leveraged either as a short-term infusion of cash, or it could be used to procure other stuff. We can go into greater detail. There's a great conversation to be had about creative use of assets and leasing strategies, but maybe not germane for right now. City Hall. So if you looked at the current dated structures and things like that in the smaller size, assuming similar gross buildable area, it's assessed to be between 10 and $13 million, depending on how it gets developed. Again, these are not, I think my economics consultant would be loath if I didn't apply a healthy dose of nuance on all this. So this is all just based on regional comps. There's like tons of market variations that can happen, but this was the best available information that we have right now for these two sites. So in summary, this is a comparison of the two properties, what the total acreages are, and what you could comp for each, what each site could be used for technically for their resale value. Reason why this is important is, the key takeaway here is that DRCC offers greater development capacity, but the city hall sites provide a stronger, it's in a better spot in a lot of ways for a lot of development, so it could be more attractive. Both sites could support future civic uses depending on council's priorities, and we'll go into the concepts. Also, the thing, I talked about this before, public-private partnerships can reduce upfront costs or minimize long-term maintenance or unlock broader community value. What this means is, if you have a city-owned asset, you could leverage that and being able to use that to fund the development of the DRCC, or it could be used to develop other community purposes, or it could be used to ground leases and get long-term revenue. There's all sorts of things that you can do once you start thinking about your assets as a tool and not just something that you just hold. So concept for builds. So what the main event, as you say, the exciting thing. So city staff evaluated, I think our team probably reviewed 32 different permutations of how this could be. Those reduced down to 8, and then that got down to 4, then we brought it down to 3. So this is kind of what we think are probably the three most plausible scenarios that we could write a scope of work around. There's the DRC Civic Campus, which will build a city hall in the DRCC, build a multi-purpose facility in DRCC, will require selling the land at City Hall, and then partner with a third party. Second option is the DRCC multi-purpose facility, where it's kind of what's been contemplated in the past with this project, right? Where City Hall remains where it is. We build a new facility at the DRCC, and then we partner with a third party. Please note, in every single scenario, partnering with a third party is still an important part of every single scenario. At no point are we abandoning a partner or not abandoning a partner. We haven't selected one at this point. Again, this is all broad strokes here. And then the third option is the downtown civic campus, which requires selling or leasing the DRCC, rebuilding City Hall in the Southtown Center with the multipurpose facility here and community partners, and then partnering with a third party, like I said. So the DRCC civic campus, like I said, this is about building a city hall there. The pros of going this scenario would be reducing financial impact due to the city hall sale, right? Instead of you have to build a $30 million structure or something, you can get 13, 18 is lower than 32, right? 30. So like that's I think the math corrects that 18 is a smaller number than 30. So that helps. And then we have minimal reliance on external funding. That means you have to leverage less, you have to borrow less, or you have to rely on state grants less. And then it consolidates municipal services to community services. That's a nice thing is that, yes, right now City Hall North and South is 2 different buildings, and then you have the family would be together. Cons, there is a high upfront cost. And also, this is kind of going back to the question I asked you at the very beginning of the presentation. Where is the heart of our community? This would move City Hall out of our downtown, out of our down, and that's an important consideration to keep in mind, right? Is where should City Hall be? Should it be on your main street, or should it be somewhere kind of in a beautiful copse of woods? No incorrect answers here. Please do not critique me for my team's artistic skills. We are planners, not graphic designers. But what we tried to do is get a more or less approximation of what the square footage of different facilities would be here. In this permutation, we're trying to show what the horizontal space would look like instead of showing you, 18,000 square feet structure. If it's 3 stories, would be a pretty small looking building on here. But I wanted to kind of show you, like, look, if you're going kind of single floor ideas, you could put a multi-purpose facility here that has a city hall, and then you could still have a 40,000 square foot third-party partner location on the Bothell Everett Highway, and then you have a bunch of parking stalls. Really, the biggest limitation, the interesting thing about all these permutations, how we can do this, parking is the biggest limitation, because you have to have a certain amount of parking for services, and that takes up the most surface area than anything else. The building itself actually takes up probably the least amount of space, because it's the parking that eats up all your space.
Can you go back to that slide?
Yeah.
It says 260 stalls. Is that on the Dobson Remillard Church property, or is that including the Cook property? Was Cook factored into?
So that Cook was not factored into it because it's such a small surface area. It's like 0.6 acres. It's not even that. I think I can go back from there. But this was assuming the 260 stalls would be located on these parcels here that he's would be located here, and then this parking limit would be separate from the 160 that would be required for a 40,000 square foot structure.
Is there any opportunity to use Cook as for drainage facility since it's downhill from Dobson Remillard?
Dan says yes.
So,
yeah,
because that could free up some developable space on the other side of the road.
Potentially, yes. Yes, Mayor. Second is the DRCC multipurpose facility. This is the one that we've talked about a lot. You build a multipurpose facility there, you keep City Hall down here, you partner with a third party. Maybe you can work in a public works facility if you want, maybe you don't, it's up to you. I'm neutral on that. The pros here is that this would be the lowest upfront cost. It's a smaller building, and there'd be no disruption to municipal services because there's no moving City Hall required. The cons are, now we're talking maintaining 3 separate structures, 3 separate facilities. That's increased operational complexity, increased challenges with maintenance, and increased reliance on external funding or debt. So those are the kind of the cons of going with this route here. One thing to keep in mind is that according to the ICMA, they estimate that a community facility of like 20,000 square feet would potentially cost somewhere between $780 and $1 million in annual operating costs, just based on regional benchmarks and what the typical, usually they benchmark municipal facility operating costs at around $25 to $40 per square foot. So there is operational costs associated with splitting out over 3. But like I said, its upfront cost is smaller to do the DRCC route as contemplated. As you can see here, similar kind of idea. We would have your community facility located there. You have about 200 stalls for parking for your community purpose facility. And, you could think vertically as well as horizontally in how we want to structure this. And then you would have your third-party partner organization there. These buildings could be combined. This option is purposely flexible. All these options are flexible. These are just purely conceptual, but you could still definitely have space for a 40,000 square foot third-party structure in addition to a community structure, or you can consolidate them and potentially find cost savings with.
Jeff, to the mayor's point he just made a moment ago, if the Cook property were to be utilized for drainage, how much space would roughly be added to the other footprints?
Dan, do you want to answer that question?
Sure, I'll play land development. Right, that's unbuttoned. For these, we could move them across the road, but I don't know that it would be any actual savings of additional area or anything like that. It's intriguing to use Cook for that. It would save costs because we wouldn't have to put things underground, but it's extremely common to put storm drainage facilities underground nowadays.
Extremely common, but extremely expensive.
Depending on your type. If you did something underneath the parking lot with a storm tech system, that is significantly less expensive than a traditional vault. So there are options to get them out of the way and without having to go across the street, because then you'd also have the cost of having a private storm drainage system cross a public road. Even though it's all maintained by the city, it still would be considered a private system crossing a right of way. So it's possible to do that. It's just not something that's common or easy to do. And there's other options you can use on sites for storm drainage for these items. So that could be incorporated into a park-like setting. So it's something that there's a lot of options. I wouldn't worry about the storm drainage system taking up too much of your site that it's going to prohibit anything.
No, I was looking at more from the angle of we spend $900,000 on the Cook property. What are we going to do with it? And how are we going to utilize it?
Okay.
I understand, Mayor. The final option, this is the one that's probably the least talked about, but, and I know from previous council comments, maybe there was less enthusiasm for this one, but as per my brand, I'm always going to give you a range of options. Some are great ideas, some are terrible ideas. Take it for, what you want, but I feel duty bound for behalf of the public to at least talk about this option. The other option is you sell the DRCC. As I said before, this property is worth about $30 million, potentially. And if the cost of developing City Hall plus community facilities is upwards of $30 million, you can see where I'm going here, that's potentially a wash. The plan with this would be you would rebuild City Wall at Southtown Center, you sell it, and then you would also locate a community center or third-party agency here. And then you'd still partner with a third party. You would still be able to have a partner involved. Pros here is maintain City Hall downtown. Where's the heart of downtown? Where's the heart of your community? Some say City Hall should be downtown. This is also minimizes their reliance on external funding, albeit through grants or through debt. And then it also consolidates municipal and community services. The cons here is this does probably have a super high upfront cost. And this would also probably represent the greatest disruption in municipal services, because we would have to temporarily locate services or location while we rebuild and stuff like that. And that is something to consider. And then the other con here would be, we would be leaving the DRCC after years of trying to figure out how to turn it into a beautiful community space, and then be walking away from it. That is something to consider as well. If you were to redevelop it, you could put a 40,000 square foot structure here with your parking stall garage here, and then you could also do a three-story you could also do a three-story City Hall with multi-purpose facility with a parking stall here as well. So it would fit. It would work here. But like I said, there's a range of options to consider. And I think, like, going back to this fundamental question, where should the heart of the community be? Do you think it should be downtown? If so, then that's option 2 and option 3. If you think that a good location for the City Hall would be in a beautiful forested location with partner agency, and then that would be the DRCC. There's a lot of great options. Here's a scenario. Here's a kind of a breakdown of the scenarios of what the advantages of each ones are, the cons, and then the space and costs associated with this. I'm certain y'all have a ton of questions, and I have a feeling most of these questions could probably be addressed by just looking at this slide instead of just bouncing back. So I'll pause here. And I guess if you want, I can go make it official and, we can go to my recommendation or we can talk about what we think here.
Jeff, what's the size of this building?
This size of this building is
14,000 is for some reason sticking in my
14,000
mind.
square
Is that
feet.
right?
I think, and then the City Hall North is 22,000 or something.
But of the 22,000, how much of that is leased out and how much of it is utilized by the city?
Keegan, I'm just calling I'm just.
This is everybody on board.
I'm just trying to get the numbers, so when we're talking about a size of facilities,
If I had to guess, probably a quarter of it's leased out or a quarter of it's used by city.
So 3/4 is.
Because Huntron's half, we're in the other half, and there's 2 floors.
Yeah.
okay.
So it's approximately.
16,000 square feet, Dan said City Hall is.
The City Hall South.
This building.
Okay, thank you.
It takes a village.
Yeah.
So I guess if you want, I can go after reviewing it with city manager and staff. We think DRCC, the option 1 makes the most sense from terms of consolidating municipal services, consolidating the community services, being able to provide everything that we've talked about, having an event center or auditorium for a theater or having community rooms and stuff like that. Plus being able to still have space for a third party organization to put in there. Option 1 makes the most sense. It also is nice that we can be able to leverage these assets here at City Hall North and South to be able to either sell up front or be able to put into some kind of ground lease structure to get a durable long-term revenue. It's what we feel is probably the best way forward, but I think that's what we recommend. And certainly this discussion is something that I've been looking forward to for a long time and happy to have discussions.
Okay. Actually, let's take care of some business. Let's have a motion to extend the regular meeting to 9:30 since we feel we're going to be here a while.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? So at 8:10, we extended the regular meeting to 9:30. Floor is open. Councilmember Cavalieri.
So I'll start us off and maybe it's a little bit more of a comment and a question. The last 2 meetings that we've had I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Prior to the last 2 meetings that we've had, I was a option 1 or 2 guy. The last 2 meetings we have, including this one, 3 is starting to make a bit of financial sense to me, given the city's financial picture. And given the opportunity, I think it would answer a lot of our growth questions as well of where to put apartments. And again, I'm just spitballing here of where to put apartments on Bothell Highway. So it's just a thought. I know I'm gonna raise some eyebrows, but the money doesn't lie. $30 million compared to half of that is a substantial number and would cover a lot of costs. My only other piece to that would be, is the Boys and Girls Club, are they still a willing participant if it's not in DRCC?
Well, I can't speak for the Boys and Girls Club, but my understanding is that maybe that funding isn't necessarily tied to a specific location. And it's just to the city of Mill Creek. And no matter what direction we choose, we would still be looking to leverage partnerships potentially with Boys and Girls Club or with, any third party. We still want to look at and evaluate. And we still want to have a third party component to this.
And the reason I asked it that way is because that adds about another 5 million in funding to the 30 million that we're talking about already. So, hey, the floor is to everybody. I'm wide open to everything right now.
Councilmember Steckler.
I was holding back because I do have quite a few comments. I've been spending some time thinking about this and since the packet went out and so let me just kind of go through these are my thoughts, just where I'm coming from. I do not support any one of the 3 options as they are written for a number of reasons. One, The decision to build a new city hall, that was initially brought up as an opportunity, given our comprehensive growth plan, what would be the value of this land? One thing I'm seeing is, sure, we're looking at maybe a $13 million top end value for the land today, but you can imagine what this land will be worth 10 years from now when there's development all around and maybe this is the last piece of land. It could easily be worth $30 to $50 million at that point. So the value of the land does nothing but increase if we wait. And I have not seen data to support a new city hall. Right now, we're not bursting at the seams. We're in desperate need of creating a new city hall. We are not. We are not. And if we're not, I don't think it would be in our best interest to build one right now, especially when it's in our best interest to wait. So I know we need a materials yard, but that's the only one that I've seen a factor data that tells me that we need that. I'm also concerned because, and maybe I'm wrong on this one, but I don't really know if we've had a formal agreement on the council of what we envision you to create as a not specifics, but the what do we call this? The building design or no, what you're hiring the firm to do.
Well, so that we would be wanting to do the community, what we would be hiring the firm to do would be do scoping on doing the programmatic decisions.
Structural analysis, right?
Yeah, well, that
Right.
would be where we decide at the next stage is where we decide, is it gonna be a theater? Is it gonna be X? Is it gonna be Y?
Okay, so I don't know if maybe the rest of the council doesn't feel the same way as I do, but I know we've talked about a civic center and we've talked about a theater performance space, to make sure it's not an auditorium. It is a actual theater environment. And also I've heard some things about basketball courts is another request. Just put everything on the table, but I don't know if we need to have a clearer agreement from the council as to what we want you to go after and present to this $300,000 consultant. So, and I would request in one of the items, any one of the ones you choose, but the civic center and theater be separated with that. So there's no confusion on the part of what we're looking for, not an auditorium, but an actual theater for the structural analysis, because that will affect the structural design. I liked the idea of and I go back to maybe some baggage here, been around here so long, when the Everett School District designed their new Everett facility they did up on Broadway up in Everett. It was a beautiful facility and it was built because they found some funding. And the uproar to them, to that leadership group was huge. Parents were incredibly incensed that that schools were going without facilities and elements, and yet we built a multi-story, beautiful executive headquarters. It didn't matter where they found the money. So it's important that if we're going to build a new city hall, we better have some very clear expectations of why we need to build a city hall. I clearly think that in about 10 years, we're going to need to build a city hall. Clearly, I don't see a reason to build one today. That doesn't mean we can't think about it. I would like, if we could look at maybe I like the idea of putting the DRCC and City Hall out at Dobson Remler and Church.
I'm sorry, putting the what?
The Civic Center, Theater, and City Hall out at DRCC. I do support that, but I would support it in a two-phased approach. What we need today is the Civic Center and Theater. We have done so much with our what do we call them? RPB funds to help the city of Mill Creek. Staffing, bonuses, equipment, trucks, police cars and sweepers and everything else. I think it's time to do something for the citizens. Something is for the citizens of Mill Creek, and that would be this civic center, this place which would support community engagement, that would transform Mill Creek as the city center has transformed it. And that's why the theater is truly a component that would separate us and show that we are committed to community engagement and forums and the arts and everything that goes along with it. So I would like to see a two-phased approach. Phase one being on one side, the civic center and theater and parking. with the idea being maybe 10 years down the road, we're going to develop the other side, the side that is, talk about where where's the heart of the city. Well, this is town center, but this isn't Mill Creek. That's not the center of Mill Creek. Mill Creek, especially what we're looking at with annexation. I'm not quite sure where our center of our city will be, the heart of our city will be. But I do know that the busiest street we've got is Balthorvet Highway, and that church property, if we put our city hall on that, is going to get the highest visibility and accessibility. So I would like to support maybe a phase 2 where we would build our new city hall maybe 10 years down the road, when gosh only knows how much money we can get for this land, because development will be in full swing, and that land will be extremely sought after, because it would be very easy to acquire and build on. Let's see, what else did I have here? I'm not at this time, I really, and this is something we started when we first had talks about this, we really need to stay away from development costs. Who's going to pay for this? Because we'll find the money. And especially with one thing we've not talked about is we have a new comprehensive growth plan that is going to mean a significant amount of new development in Mill Creek, which means a significant amount of revenue from development fees. And that's going to bring a ton of revenue to our city. And then over the next 10 years of all these multi-purpose facilities going up. So there's going to be money to be available for us, that maybe if we build it. But I think that the core of my feeling is I would like to see our DRC, our Civic Center and Theater and our City Hall together on that property. But I would definitely not leave the City Hall. Don't need it today. Don't need it today. Yes, we'll find we'll find the yard that we can solve that problem pretty easily. But for the gravel and everything else, but that's the only real need that we have. But boy, in about 10 years from now, we will be in need probably of a new city hall. I think we will definitely have a lot of issues. And at that point, we're gonna have a lot more money from that land to put towards that wonderful city hall. But in the meantime, let's focus on something for our citizens and our city to make our city great. We've missed that. We've really missed that. We've been spending all these last 5 years cleaning up our beautiful job, cleaning up this city hall and our structure and our fleet and our equipment and everything else and our staffing. I agree with everything and support everything we've done, but now it's time to do something for the citizens and get that done. And that's my comments.
John, just to be clear, what staff's asking us for, one of the questions I asked Jeff yesterday was, did they take into consideration phasing? They're not proposing under this alternative that we go and build it all at once. It's just doing the planning. So we very well, if we decided to go with that option, the council could choose. Let's plan for it. Maybe we move forward with component 1 and component 1 and 2. We have a plan for component 3, which could be a city hall, and maybe the city pursues that in 5-10 years. Maybe they don't, and they use it for something else.
Sure. I just want to make my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I
available.
understand, but
That's
I'm
all.
just saying that we just want to be clear. They're not asking for us to approve. Let's go out and do all this and do it all at once. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I am kind of surprised to hear Councilmember Cavallari say option 3. As I look at these, the option I don't want to do is option 3. However, I agree. The option that gives us money when we are low on money is option 3. So I think that brings us into the conundrum, right? I think the thing that holds me from saying I would do option 3 is that when I was out doorbelling, one of the things, and this has been 4 years now, so people change their mind, but one of the things everybody kept telling me when I would ask them what they wanted to do on that property is they kept telling me absolutely no apartments. They didn't care what we did, but no apartments. So I feel like if we sold it to develop it, it would end up being what they don't want it to be. But yeah, I agree with Councilmember Cavallari. It does kind of make the most financial sense. So that's something to ponder. For me, Councilmember Steckler actually brought up a couple things that are on my mind as well, because he is absolutely right. When we are talking about the Everett School District building, and everyone got really upset about that being built. And when we're talking about what we want to do at DRCC, it has to remain a discussion geared around providing something for the residents, something that we've been envisioning for recreation opportunities. And thank you, Councilmember Steckler, for remembering that I really want basketball courts over there. So, and I think that part needs to come first. And in our retreat, we had mentioned one of the reasons for looking at selling this property to move it was that to see if it would bring in the money to pay for what we're doing. And it seems like it'll bring in some money, but not the whole amount. So I do kind of find myself leaning more towards option 2. But I guess in some way though, I'm kind of with Councilmember Steckler because I'm leaning towards option 2, but yet with leaving it with the space so that you could still decide in the future if it makes more sense to move City Hall over there. So I think that's kind of where my head is. And I do want to make sure that we are doing the multi-purpose facility, because that for me is the number one thing that we've been discussing since I got on council. And that's really important for me, for the residents to have access to that facility.
So if I could interject, so one thing to think about when it comes to the valuation of City Hall North and South, is there's 2 ways of thinking about publicly owned property, right? You can sell it for cash up front, right? And then just use that money or capital. You can also, because it is potentially the gateway to the Southtown Center redevelopment, there is also the opportunity to do a long-term ground lease. And you offer it up for a development, and then they would pay a ground lease to the city, and that would be a durable long-term revenue, additional revenue paid to the city that we would just, you know, be beneficiaries of that. And so it wouldn't provide the upfront capital for construction, but it could be an opportunity to have an additional revenue stream that's created through land ownership and using that asset. And that the second advantage being, when a lot of times we talk about redevelopment, a lot of cities talk about looking for that catalytic project. Not a lot of cities own land that they're redeveloping in that area. And so if you could kick off the redevelopment in an area, developing on our standards with the controls that we want, then that signals to the other property developers like, oh, I see what they're doing. Okay, I kind of like that. And then so that would be kind of a secondary advantage perhaps to, even though you didn't get as much money as we thought we would, it could be used in that way. Not saying we should do that. I'm just simply saying that that is another way that you can think about public assets.
Before I get to Councilmember Ellison, a quick note of fact about the Everett School District before it gets cited too much. That uproar was entirely the school district's own doing. That money that was used to build that facility was because the Everett School District did such a damn good job on their capital facilities project. They had extra money from the bonds that could not be put to the schools, could not be put to more teachers. It could only be used for capital facilities. And the Everett School District did a piss poor job of educating the public about it, and they got beat up. And it cost them us having another high school in the district. That's what's killed the bond measure since. So I'm not sure it provides a good example for what we're contemplating today. Councilmember Ellison.
Yeah, so I feel like, I mean, I think we should be thinking about everything we are thinking about, but really we're trying to put parameters around what concept we want the firm to go look at, right? Deep dive and really give us an analysis. The staging or the, you know, the phase 1 or the phase 2, whatever that happens to be, that's all after the fact planning. So I am leaning more toward focusing on option 2 right now, but I think from an efficiency perspective, the city would be better served having all of the city like in one campus. So eventually I would want the city hall to be there too. Yeah, that's where my head is at. And the operating costs long-term scare me. So that whatever partnership we could come up with, as much as I know John Steckler is really one-minded, wants an auditorium, I just, it's an expensive endeavor. So we have to figure out how we would fund that. So that's my 2 cents.
Vince, before I get back to you, I'm going to give everyone else an opportunity to say something first. Councilmember Paddock?
I guess I think about for me, there's kind of 3 principles I think about for what we want to do. One is what I would like us to do. One is to create a chance, a feeling of place or a center for the city. I think you called it, the way you described it, being something catalytic as I was heading out to Little Cowboys room. That's it, like a center for people to gather. 2 is what's going to accelerate the development of the Southtown Center. And then 3rd would be the total cost of ownership, or, the biggest bang for the buck. And to me, that really leans towards 3. I don't necessarily think, my thinking of it is, I wouldn't necessarily support, hey, let's go out and build a new city hall, but a center, a multi-purpose center type of thing that has space for city offices and city services. Something like that would make sense in either place versus let's go build a city hall. Let's build a gathering place for our citizens, for our community, et cetera, that includes city services. So those are, to me, like, if you think about principles, those are my 3 principles, and that's why I would lean towards 3 with, maybe 2, but lean towards 3. Yeah.
Liza, did you have any comments?
I don't know, I pressed the light up button. Apologies. I had questions for some people, but I think overall, based off of hearing everyone's thoughts, I remember thinking about option 3 before it was an option when I first joined, asking like, why hadn't we, or when we were talking about what the sub-area would be. So in between, we had that one plan that came to us from the sub-area committee group, and then where we were obviously with the comp plan. I remember asking about it and was like, no. And I'm always interested in the what Mayor Pro Tem said about no apartments when you walked. For me, but it's a no apartments discussion. It wasn't necessarily there. It's that general sense that people have that they don't want more apartments. So I don't know, for me, that doesn't impact, because we're in a different day. Things need to be built. There's housing needs. So there's a lot of concern. I hate to say my gut is still, or with the information provided, I'm still interested in option 2. The only hesitation I have, of course, is that puts us back to where we were a year ago, because we're still saying that we're just going with, or before our retreat, I should say, where we're still saying we want this multi-purpose facility. We don't know what, but we want it up there. And so it's kind of like we took a detour for all this additional information, which is very helpful, but we're still where I thought we were initially. So it's not a waste of time at all. It's more of like a reaffirmation of what we need. And I really appreciate the language of where's the heart of the community. Because I think that's one of the things as part of like chamber conversations, right? In business community, it's like, where do you want everyone to be? And I know when we were talking about our comprehensive plan, the idea of, there was some language in there where it was like, let's not just focus language on town center, make sure we're saying that there's other like areas, because I think that's really important too, to make sure that we're not just focusing in one specific. So I definitely wanted to hear from all of you, and I know obviously still need to hear from our mayor, your ideas, your feedback, because that was, I felt I wanted to know your thoughts. And I think based on that, I'm still very much interested in option 2. Because I don't, when I reviewed the presentation, and then now, thank you very much for providing everything, I don't think a case has been made one way or another. I will say the idea of we don't need a city hall now, but in like 10 years or something like we'll need. Well, that's actually what we're planning for now. We're not building anything right now. So we should be thinking, what is it we need in 10 years? What is it we need in 15 years? So as we're thinking about all of this, those things are very valid and important because we're not building it now. It's probably 10, 15. I don't have a cool unbuttoned shirt to be a land developer or anything like that to make that case. But when I'm thinking about this, I'm not thinking in the immediacy. I am thinking long-term of where we are and aligning with, are we matching our goals for the city's 2040 vision? Thank you.
Yeah, I had a few thoughts. When I first reviewed these options, I couldn't tell the difference between option 2 and option 3, other than you're gonna look at doing the planning for potentially putting City Hall there. Really, that's, I think, the only difference. It's interesting, you know, we've been here before. Some of you may or may not remember it. I'm sure Director Todd will smirk a little bit. Back in 2013, was there a plan for the city to condemn property over here where Baskins and Robbins and Azteca is and build a new city hall over there? You know, at the time, there wasn't much support for that, but I think it was a different time. I like to think about it this way. Back then, the city was 28. Kind of still living in an apartment, not ready to settle down, no kids. You know, we talk about, is the city a glorified HOA that's maturing into a city? I think we're in a different spot here 12 years on. You know, we're now 40, going on 41. It's a time to settle down and find a home for the long term. So I don't know if that means the city hall will move there. But the thing that we did not have 12 years ago was a plan for this area. And yes, we could wait for development to happen elsewhere, but I would suspect we may be waiting 10, 15, 20 years for something else to happen there, when we have an opportunity with option 3 to plan for moving City Hall over there, and the city being the impetus for that sub area coming to reality. That's the thing that's different now than wasn't present back in 2013. So I'm in support of looking at, I'm not saying that City Hall gets moved up there, but I'm in favor of planning for it. If the council then next year, 2 years down the road decides not to move forward with that, then you have the option of using it for something else. But I think we should be looking at that option, because I think we have an opportunity to jumpstart the sub area. And that's, you know, that's why we did the sub areas, to spur economic development. And redeveloping this for a bigger City Hall facility isn't going to spur redevelopment necessarily. I'm not sure that's going to entice developers to want to invest in the Southtown Center like it would if this was made available for the first piece of development that could be done. And there's creative ways to structure that, like was stated. I mean, it could be done, whereas rather than being sold, it's sold on a long-term ground lease, where the developer gets to develop it, and it's a 100-year ground lease, and the city still gets some revenue from it. So there are many different options that could be explored there. So I'm in favor of at least option 2, but I would hope that we look at option 3 to plan for a potential City Hall move. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I don't see the harm in planning for it.
Mayor, just
Do you mean, are you switching 1 and 3?
2 and 3, I'm sorry, 2 and 3. I'm sorry, did I get my numbers inverted?
yeah.
I think you. are
One, I'm
jumping 1 and
sorry, yeah, I'm sorry, 1 and 2. I thought it was the other way around. I'm sorry. I'm not in favor of selling the DRC property to redevelop this site. Councilmember Cavallari.
Thanks, Mayor. And I wanted to, Mayor Pro Tem made some good comments that hit home as well, is that we've all campaigned and we've all heard from members of the public and how they'd like, you know, a facility and a shiny new toy and less apartments. But so over the years, we started to make investments in buying up chunks of those land right there so we can have control and say over whatever it is that we do over there, whether it was a public works facility, whether it was City Hall, whether it was more apartments, whatever, it was going to be our decision. But originally, it was supposed to be a soccer field, 2 new ball fields, and a potential structure. And so the only reason I point that out, because, you know, for those in the room that haven't heard this before, after the wetland study, it showed us that we have a lot less land than we thought we had. And so we have to live in the real world. And so we have to be fluid in these situations and willing to change and willing to, and just like I said, that ball fields were the reason I got behind those investments, but they're not possible at this point. We've learned that our investments in those pieces of land are substantial, and they substantially increased, and they really, and like I said, it's only been the last two meetings, they've really changed the complexity of this dynamic. And I think 3 opens up more opportunities while keeping those promises that we're going to get a facility. It's just going to be moved down the road a little bit, but we're maximizing our investment, which is, in my opinion, being a good steward of the taxpayers' dollars. And again, I was the first one to scream for the rooftop set that I wanted a structure there. I wanted I think the words I used back then, and I still use it, is shiny new toy. But when they presented option 3, it just seemed to kind of make sense. And again, I'm not married to it. I think 2 is probably a good option as well, but the most financially beneficial with the most options to me, what I see here is option 3. And I think we'd kind of be silly not to look at that as well if we can somehow run a parallel universe there.
Financially beneficial in what way?
In the sense that we maximize the value of DRCC monies here. We open up the possibility of selling lands here and doing like the director said, of dictating or kicking off the growth down in the sub area. I think those components, or the way that would flow downhill, just creates endless possibilities for us.
So are you saying you support selling the DRCC or selling the city hall?
He's supporting option 3, the downtown
Option 3,
campus.
Thank
You know, one way, in the interest of moving us along, my wife makes me watch a show called Tiny Homes on Hulu, where they show people wanting to downsize 3 tiny homes. And then after they show them, the couple steps back and they always rule out one to begin with. And then they're deciding between 2 others, which leads me to the question, is there a majority of the council that wants to consider option 3?
I would not consider option 3.
I would not consider it either. So I'm hearing that there's 4 people that would not consider option 3. So I would suggest, without having a formal motion, that we focus our energies. City manager.
Okay, well, I'll give my 2 cents too. As Jeff kind of alluded to, I think one of the first things we need to look at is what our community needs. And I think we've had multiple discussions on the DRCC, what that brings to the community, which leaves us with options 1 or 2. I understand financial viability, what we're in a position we're in, but we have options as well that we need to think about that are coming in a strategic retreat in January of 2026 in terms of annexation and revenue. So there's a lot more to think about as we make these decisions now and what impact that will have down the road. So I guess stepping back and looking at what do you ultimately want on that property and what do you want here? Next thought is there's probably an interplay between there's interplay between what happens in South Down Center and DRCC. To develop a quality product on this end of town means at some point in time, City Hall's got to move. In my opinion, that's the fact. Whether it's at the end of the project or after the multi-purpose gets built, but it has to move eventually for that continuous flow of mixed use or retail, whatever it may be, just considering, as you mentioned, the opportunity cost of having City Hall here. I think finance, I mean, that's an easy trigger. We all agree completely that financially it's a way to solve our problems, but we have a lot of other options too to solve problems. And I'm, again, still leaning, as Director Ryan mentioned, we're leaning towards option 1 because we feel like we can give what the community wants and needs and address not only our financial concerns and stage this out in a way that might address City Hall coming in later. But at some point in time, you look down the road, you're going to look back and think maybe I should have. So I think you need to think about really what you want on that property that really meets the needs of the community ultimately. So,
If I could follow up, city manager, there may be a bridge here. Since it seems to be some, either we do 2 or 1, we can, if you choose option 1, right, and we lay out the site, we know there's gonna be a third-party site, and it's just a matter of, when we do the master plan, we could plan out, like, we could just section off, like, all right, this part of the land is eventually going to be the city hall eventually, that could be part of the phase 3. Like, we could certainly kind of proceed with option 1, and we could structure the phasing to deliver the community's facility first, and then just design it in a way that we could eventually just build an addition for the city hall addition or whatever. Or, that's something that certainly is a path forward. If we can't decide between 1 and 2, perhaps there's, I don't want to say a third way because there's 3 options. There's a 4th way where it's just somewhere between 1 and 2, a 1.2, a 1.5 way. We'll go that way.
Councilmember Paddock.
If 3 is off the table and I would apply those same principles, then to me, 1 would be would at least hit 2 of the principles. It doesn't goose anything for town center. I think we lose by not trying to build something in South Town Center here that was like kind of a community space. I think we lose that. But if that's the majority doesn't want that, then I would shift my focus to 1 just for point of information.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a question. When Martin's saying that he thinks number 1 addresses our financial concerns, can you elaborate on that?
it does not address our financial concerns, but I think there are other opportunities to address financial concerns. But I believe using this discussion as a way, a means of maybe as an option, which it is, by choosing option 3, yeah, that does address our financial concerns to some extent. Option 1 will not, but there are other ways to do that, which we will be exploring.
Okay.
Beginning of 2026.
I think that's what we're worried about, though, is that.
Yeah, that's right.
We'll get to it later. I think I wrote it down, John's famous last words. We can worry about the funding or how to pay for it later.
Yep.
That scares me and moves me to 2 if we're in picking sides here.
Councilmember Stackler.
Yeah, so couple things. 1, the funding issue, so since that's the last thing that was talked about. There are a lot of ways to fund out of the financial situation that we're in right now. We could start talking about those today, but it's going to take us all down a bunch of rabbit holes. And I think what the city manager is saying is that's something that we need to address in January. But there are financial solutions on the table and available to us. So our decision today shouldn't be based on a financial concern, which way we want to go. Because there are a whole bunch of ways we could go. We haven't even started talking about. That's what I meant with, if we talk about how we're going to pay for it, then we'll never get it done. If we talk about how we pay for it, we never would have done town center. There are ways to make it happen. And we could start talking about those if we want to today, but it's going to take us a lot longer than 9:30. Maybe we should. But going back to these 3 concepts are now 2 concepts. And Jeff has brought up this 3rd one. I want to reiterate my point a little bit clearer. I do support number 1. I do want to see both on DRCC. I don't want to see our city hall in this area because I think the value of this area, when I said 10 years down the road, when all development happens, it's going to be so significantly high. We're going to really want to sell that piece of property. Somebody's going to want it and pay us a huge amount of money. So the value in the land today is not what the value in the land will be when it's all developed. We know, I'm sure everybody would agree with that. I just would like number 1 to lead with the civic center and theater space, the gifts to the community first, not the city hall. And the reason I brought up the issue with the Everett School District was they couldn't talk their way out of it. If we don't have good, solid information of why we're taking city funds to build a new city hall, we shouldn't build a new city hall. But I can tell you, we will have some very good reasons, not today, but sometime down the road here, we're going to we're gonna have some very solid reasons as to why we need to build that city hall. And if we got the land at DRCC, that's a big chunk of it. And I think we could build something that our city would be proud of in that area, as opposed to cramming it all into this little area in here. Let's put a civic center in here and an auditorium theater in here. You're gonna be shoving all kinds of stuff into this little hole that we're in right now. I don't think that's the solution. I think the solution is DRCC. As you called it a couple of times, that lovely forested area of development, which is indicative of what makes Mill Creek unique, all of our parks and our greenery and everything else. I think this is our opportunity to make decisions today that will be huge in the future about who would have thought we had the vision to put, of all things, a theater in there, a civic center, take their city hall and move it down there. I think that's the kind of thinking we need to think about. But I wouldn't want to do city hall first, and I'd want to do the DRC first. But I think I should be clear. I like number one because ultimately I'd like to see city hall down there.
We can certainly put that in the phasing
Yeah,
if that is the
yeah.
direction of council.
Councilmember Allison.
Yeah, from a what to do planning wise, I support number one, but for the same reason Councilmember Steckler just mentioned, your 1.5 solution makes the most sense to me right now. You know, like, doesn't make sense to go build a new city hall. We need to build something that doesn't exist yet. And maybe that would take care of City Hall North. You know, we could sell that building space off. You know, some kind of phasing.
Yeah, I think what's confusing with this slide is it says sell city hall. I think option one is plan for a city hall on that property. How we pay for it, we don't know. It could be selling city hall down here. Could be some other source that we don't know about. So I don't think we're making a decision to sell city hall. Option one is really planning for a city hall on the DRCC site. How we get there, I don't know. If I heard correctly, did I hear someone say that they didn't think option one addresses the city's financial situation? Because if that was the statement, I entirely disagree. That's why we redesignated the sub area for the zoning, is to develop tax revenue. And if we can jumpstart that, option one will absolutely have an impact on our city's financial situation long-term with the property tax revenue that would generate down here, the sales tax revenue. It'd have a big multiplier effect.
Think you got a majority on here. Someone make a motion. Well, I'm about consensus. And it's obviously at least 5 of my fellow council members believe option one is the best option. I think the city staff has spoken. And again, I approached my perspective from a more fiscally responsible standpoint. And so here's what I'll do. I'll make a motion that we move to direct city staff to pursue option one with the consultants to be determined.
I'll second it.
I'll second.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, I was gonna have discussion too.
Well, the suggestion to the motion, I would suggest it to be clarified before we have a firestorm in the press that we've decided to sell City Hall, that option one be redefined to say we plan for a city hall on the DRCC property. We're not agreeing or committing that we're selling City Hall. So that'd be my suggestion for.
So in the bullet of that motion, where it says DRCC Civic Campus plus multipurpose facility, we just exclude Cell City Hall.
Well, can you go back to the slide? Just
Go to the red one, yeah.
I just want to make sure that what is it?
There's a better one.
Okay, so it
summary of
already says
scenarios.
plan for SOA. I would just take out the third, I would suggest we take out the third bullet.
That's what I just said.
I understand, but my suggestion is somehow through this motion, we clarify, because all the materials that define what the options are that we'd be approving, if someone goes and looks at the agenda packet, it's gonna say we've decided option one to sell City Hall. That's
Mayor,
all.
with the language here, be sufficient where we state that where City Hall will be planned for eventual relocation. That way, the motion and then the resolution language will be modified to reflect that the City Hall would be eventually planned for and not.
That would address my concern, but that's up to the maker and the.
I'll withdraw my motion and move to amend.
Can we add about having the multipurpose?
It's on there.
You're just planning another DRCC.
Well, we,
In the scenario, I'm sorry, Mayor, in the summary of scenarios, it says DRCC Civic Campus plus multipurpose facility.
What is grant? Sorry, I'm not technically the chair at the moment, but I'm acting like mayor before I'm the mayor.
Mayor,
yes,
what I would suggest is, if there's a motion that relates to option one, has that been moved in second?
it has been moved and seconded.
Okay, my recommendation would be that the second to the last whereas clause in the proposed resolution be amended to say, what it says, whereas the DRCC Civic Campus Concept, option one, says consolidates City Hall. Maybe we add language that says plans for a future, plans for future consolidation of City Hall.
Yeah.
So that it would address the sentiment I'm hearing in the room.
So Grant, do I need to withdraw my motion or just amend it?
No, I think if we could just get
If you can amend it and the second agrees to it. then
yeah,
it'd be
if
amended.
there could be amendment to change that language.
It's in the packet. It's the form. There was in the packet.
Yeah,
Was it in
page
the packet?
121 of the packet.
Well, there's one on the screen right now.
Proposed
Looks-
resolution for each one of the options.
I just want to make sure that we have clear council direction to make that change in the
Yeah.
resolution.
So
So then I move to amend my motion. To option one, the city of Mill Creek authorizes the city manager to advertise and negotiate a request for qualified consultant to complete the master planning of the DRCC multipurpose facility where City Hall will be planned for eventual relocation, also known as the option one.
I'll second that, yeah. Still want to have discussion.
does the maker of the motion want to speak to his motion?
Again, I wasn't married to number three. I just saw it as the best use and presented more opportunities. I see the council is passionate here, as am I, to get started here. So in the desire to simply move forward and get this, I'll say it one more time, this shiny new toy going. That's my rationale behind it. I think we've procrastinated a little bit and it hasn't always been our fault. I think Jeff spoke about it, COVID and financial issues and wetland studies. And so here we are and I'll support one wholeheartedly.
Councilmember Steckler?
Just in discussion, Jeff, I wanted to clarify for everybody, myself especially, but maybe some of the other council members. We have two areas on Dobson Remler that are actually buildable. And when we were just looking at keeping City Hall here, you had the Civic Center and Theater on one side, and then a second party that would take over the side on Bothell Highway. When we look at this new motion, are we looking at putting both the Civic Center, the theater, and the City Hall all on that one side? Or will they look at the possibility of putting City Hall on that other side of the wetland, which borders up on Bothell Highway?
So part of that process will be determined. That's to be figured out.
Good,
Right
good.
now,
So they'll
it's-
be open to
yeah.
both. That's all I ask, is they're not married to keeping it on one side.
No.
They'll look at the best use of both sides.
They
Okay,
haven't been identified
No, I
yet.
just want
That's
to
the
clarify that,
purpose
yeah.
of the
I
mo-
just wanted to clarify that, because I think in your slide, you had them both on one side,
Yeah.
on that one slide. So I just wanted to clarify that we're not married to that. Yeah, great.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually wasn't done earlier, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
You should have
But
kicked me.
now's the perfect time. So as we discuss this, I want to kind of bring out what the reason why I'd mentioned the Everett School District does go really to what the mayor was saying, because I think it's important, the communication. And I don't think we always are excellent at doing our communication. And so for me, it's really important that we have the multipurpose facility. And if we're going forward with this option to look at making plans for moving City Hall as well, then we really need to be having the communication and the discussion with the residents so they understand why we came to this decision, and really get them on board with this as we go through this process, because it's really important that they understand and they don't start to think that the things that you come up with, because the school district did do a poor job of communication regarding that decision. It was a good decision. They did a poor job of explaining that to everybody. So I think that's extremely important for me, that we do a really good job of communicating this out. And I think it's extremely important, like we said, that we phase in, that we start with the multi-purpose facility and get that moving. And that that's my priority, where I want to see us start to be moving. So that's just what I want to say about this. So, thanks.
Anyone else? Before we get to the vote, it's kind of ironic. 2013, I ran against the City Hall. Today, I'm going to vote for planning for a new City Hall in the future. But I ran for a third term for two reasons. I want to see the comp plan across the line. We got that, and I was hopeful we'd get to a master plan for DRCC before the end of my third term. We didn't get there, but I think we've set the direction with this motion. So I'm excited about this and what it portends for the future of Mill Creek. So I'll be voting in favor. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Any abstentions? The motion passes 6-1-0. Thank you.
Mayor, were you
Yes.
voting on the amendment?
I'm sorry?
Did you vote on the amendment first?
It wasn't an amendment. He amended his motion and the second agreed to the amendment.
Okay.
Okay. Where are we in the agenda? Okay, that's our last item of new business. We have no proposed new initiatives. We have no study sessions, which brings us to our consent agenda. Item K, resolution related to the Everett School District Resource Officer SRO Interlocal Agreement ILA for 2025 and 26. Item L, approval of checks 69036 through 69095 and ACH wire transfers in the amount of $274,916.21. Audit committee was the Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Allison. Were there any exceptions?
No exceptions.
No exceptions.
And item M, city council meeting minutes of June 3rd, 2025, June 10th, 2025, and June 24th, 2025. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Reports, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two reports. One, the first part of it is, as you all are aware, I would like to schedule a special meeting on the 29th of this month. I understand Councilmember Steckler will be present. Mayor, Councilmember Duque will be online, remote, so.
And Councilmember Cavallari should be able to be here, although he
Could
may
be
be
able-
late.
Yes, correct. And
Correct.
if there are no objections, we just like to head nod that go ahead and move forward and schedule that 29th meeting. The main part, what we're bringing forward is the financial policy discussion. We'll hopefully get that passed just that date, on that day, and then we'll bring forward a few contracts, Laura Haying contracts that we need council to approve before the break. Council doesn't object, I'll just keep moving forward with my second report.
Yes, we don't need a motion to schedule that,
Okay,
do we?
all right, so let's go ahead and
We
do
do
that.
need a motion. Okay, so we need a motion to direct staff to schedule a special meeting on July 29th.
Move to have staff schedule a special meeting on July 29th.
Second.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 7-0. Other staff reports.
One more financial report. Before we hear from our finance director about our monthly report, just want to take a brief moment just to provide some kind of forward thinking context to kind of what we're looking forward to in the next month before our month-long break. While we do remain financially stable now, we will be entering probably at least five subsequent years where there will be ongoing operating costs. That will definitely outpace revenues, probably at an increasing rate. As we prepare our current mid-buy budget for the second half of this biennium, I'm looking at restructuring our cost structure a bit to give council an accurate view of the 25 to 26, for example, maintenance operations and CIP costs moving forward, which is the bulk of our costs, in addition to PD and the rest of the city. But we're doing a little bit of restructuring, so you have more of an accurate forecast of what we expect in this biennium, the next one when we face a potential deficit, and more of a WAG in that years 5 and 6. It's an approach I think that will require sustaining current staffing levels, and also possibly investing in additional resources, which may include additional position or two in equipment, as our city engineer referred to, about potentially self-performing, for example, catch basins. To do that, you would need perhaps a Vector truck to do that, or you can outsource that as well. But we will look at the trade-offs of that. We have one street sweeper. If that goes down, we don't have anything else to replace that. So we have to also consider redundancies in certain areas going forward. So these are things that we, staff think about in terms of ensuring that we have ongoing maintenance on our streets, for example. So having those redundancies, create efficiencies, not having delays, not having to go out and outsource products and services. If it can be avoided, sometimes when you have that equipment in-house, you're able to just immediately get things done. So with that, I'll turn it over to Finance Director for a monthly update. So just want to give council some expectations there. So thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff, and to the audience joining us virtually and also in the council chambers. I just have a handful of slides tonight. The quarter ending financial and investment report has been reviewed by the Finance Committee, and I thank you for their feedback. And they suggested that I provide just a handful of these slides just for better visualization and understanding of the report. So really quickly, I just wanted to give a high-level overview of what has transpired over the first 6 months of the year. Our benchmark is at 25%, representing the quarter activities. So the general fund revenues and the general fund expenditures both show that we are about or less than the benchmark. Our revenues are at 25% received, and our expenditures is at 20.6% received. Based off of our adopted budget and what we are estimating, we did a soft preliminary projection for the biennium, and we determined that we would have improved based off these preliminary information. Our ending fund balance would be at a better spot from 6.7 million to now 8.7 million. And again, comparing our revenues for year to date versus our expenditures are again showing that they're higher than what our revenues are by about 8,000. And then this next slide depicts the general fund projection, the current biennium, as well as the next two biennium. You've seen this before when we were talking about the property tax levy last November. And this one is an updated version of it. This time we're showing the revenue in blue, just the revenue itself. And then the green area is the reserve, the fund balance reserve. And the orange line is the general fund expenditure. And this model is depicts more the structurally balanced, model as opposed to the statutory balance model. So this one shows that when we adopted the budget in 2024 or toward that end, we were already experiencing that structural imbalance wherein our revenues that we were getting are lower than the expenditures that we are programming or what are committed to pay for. And over the next biennium, 2025 and 2026, that continues to go above. The expenditure continues to go above the revenue line. And it will continue to do so because as of now, the information that we have in our assumption is that we will continue to just assess the 1% statutory property taxes. And the rest of our revenues will continue to just increase by 2% unless we do a different source of funding for different taxes, utility taxes, or the taxing districts that we've been talking about.
Ermina?
Yes, sir.
Not for tonight, but at a future meeting, could you provide some numbers? The public safety 1% sales tax, 0.1% sales tax that Representative Berg brought up. How much would that generate on an annual basis in terms of, well, how much would it generate on an annual basis, and then how would it affect those lines material? Does that make sense?
And would that be doubled because they would match it? I thought you said that.
I'm not familiar with the bill, so I thought I may have heard that too.
Yeah, I
So-
thought I heard her say that they would match it up to 1%.
So whatever's available,
That's not what you heard her say?
well,
It said there was grant funding available to possibly match
yeah,
that,
okay.
not necessarily, it was competitive.
Whatever that councilmatic option is, I think the council should know what those numbers are. And what, I think another important consideration is the timing of what it would look like to those lines if it was implemented this year or if it was implemented in 2026.
I can roll in those numbers when we start to talk about the mid-buy revenue projections sometime in September.
Thank you.
And then, so going back to this slide, the required reserve for the 6 years that we're talking about remains at 3.8 million. And then you can see that as this gap continues to increase year over year, that in turn suggests that we would start to use our revenue reserve, and that's why this area right here continues to decline. And at some point in 2029, we will be in deficit in the surplus as well. Excuse me, surplus deficit in the fund balance as well.
We go below the required.
No, and then at 28.
Yeah, right here. The next slide is the surface utility 6-year projection. So I know that earlier you've heard about the projects and how we tried to fund the $4.5 million. And so based off the information that we received from the engineering group, we did the same model. Again, the green area is the reserve fund for just the surface water. The blue line is the expenditures for surface water, and the orange line is the revenue. And again, this depicts the structural model, balance model of funding. And this shows that even prior to 2025, this fund is already structurally imbalanced because revenues are below your expenditures. We have been using the reserve fund, and recall that this fund includes the bond proceeds that was issued in 2020. That's why you have that gap.
I had a quick question. Maybe I thought I remembered that we would still have 1.1 million in reserves after we complete this project. Different, oh, I'm sorry, that's the catch basin versus surface water. Sorry.
But the catch basin is funded by surface water.
Yeah, so,
Right.
well, we still have 1.1 million in
We do.
reserves?
And so this line right here, this dash line is the reserve line for the surface water. So the reserve requirement for surface water is at 1.7 million.
But it looks like it's gone as of 2027.
So no, this is 2027 and the zero line is right here.
So by 2028, we still have to complete all those costs.
Yes.
And we will go below.
Yes, so this model assumes that you will just continue to increase surface water fees by 3% a year. And there would be some grants that will be coming in 28, 29 when surface water program, the SMAP projects. That's why it doesn't look too bad. But we also did a different model where we did a combination of surface water fees, borrowing model, as well as the grant coming in. And this one shows that as we issue the borrowing, the line of the revenue and expenditures would now come to, they'll be equal, so they'll be balanced, structurally balanced at this point if we do some type of borrowing. But as we borrow, the required reserve would also go up incrementally because of the debt service requirement.
We need to have part of our discussion on the financial policies, how frequently we update the surface water rates. I'm not sure that's in there now, but it seems like we're out of whack. We're collecting fees based on an old set of projects, and now we're trying to fund a new set of projects based on old numbers.
Yes, so, and that's why we're bringing this forward, because based off of the current ordinance right now, the last surface water rate increase is effective as of 2026. But in talks with engineering and with executive team, we're trying to figure out, should we have to analyze whether if we could change the rates by 2026, but I don't think we would have time because that should happen before November. And so I think our next opportunity will be for sure in 2026. We start to talk about adjusting surface water fees so that it can be effective in 2027 and adjust it accordingly there.
And Mayor, the Finance Committee saw this and made a request also to have information on what are other cities paying in regards to surface water fees? Because when we saw that same information on utility taxes, it was a real eye opener to us. So I think this would help let us know, how do we compare against other cities and similar sizes and such?
We'll get that information to you. And then, of course, for our investment portfolio overall, including all the funds in the city, we have about $41.2 million in excess funds that we are investing in both LGIP as well as in certain US bond obligations. And year to date, we've earned about 872,000. LGIP rate average for the first 6 months of the year is about 4.4 compared to 5.4 last year. And that's a factor of generally because the federal funds rate are now at 4.25 to 4.5. That has not changed for the last few months. And then the US bonds that we are holding, which is 4 million, we've earned about 66,000, and that's being rolled into or was transmitted to the city's bank account to fund operations, and that's average of about 3.8% in earnings. That concludes my report, Mayor.
Thank you, Kuzu.
Mayor, huh?
I still have 161 more days.
It isn't even cold yet, you know?
Any questions for Amina?
Just one question if I could. If you go back to the structural deficit, the
General
general
fund?
fund, yeah. So, just remind me, when when does council start looking at what we're gonna do for next year if we change any of this? This looks like a trend to the Edmonds, Everett, Mukilteo situation. And obviously we wanna, the leverage is now. So when do we as a council kind of talk through that?
So right now, I believe we're planning on coming back to you September to provide you with preliminary revenues for 2026. And that model should include the initiative that we're doing for the development fees, that we're trying to do the citywide review and analysis, and we're going to be coming back to you for recommendations to increase those fees. So that incremental difference will be in here. And then I believe, based off of that, we'll talk about the mid-buy and see if where we're gonna be at in terms of that 1.4 million in deficit that we're operating deficit that we are facing in 2026. Whether the answer would be still funding that with our fund balance reserve, or will that be a smaller number because of the fees that we're thinking about? And then also, I believe that the city manager has programmed that we will be talking about future financing models, whether that would be utility funding or transportation districts or any other things that we could, levers that we can pull to balance the budget, would be sometime in January when we do the strategic planning.
Sean, the next opportunity to comprehensively look at it is next year when you guys do the budget. I mean, in November, we have to make a decision on the property tax levy for next year. So that's one area, but that's a small number unless there's a will of the majority to dive into the bank capacity to raise some money. Short of that, then we could look at this year. We have the tax we just talked about, the public for public safety. Utility tax is always out there. So, I mean, but that's looking at things in kind of isolation.
Okay, so September sounds like we kind of look at where we're going with some new assumptions possibly. And then November would be a trigger if we want to look at the property tax. And then January would be, hey, do we want to look at other sources of revenue?
It's probably going to be a big topic of your guys' retreat in January.
Okay.
I was hoping that September, we would be having, options to look at, not just talking about what the numbers are gonna look like, that we're gonna have. We've been talking about taxing districts, we've been talking about, different utility taxes and all that we'd have the bare numbers that we could start seeing, that if we did do these things, it would produce X. That was my hope for it, or at least that was my understanding for the beginning of September.
We could put those, scenarios together.
I think it would be helpful for all of us.
Absolutely.
Well, me in particular.
Any other questions for Amina?
Excellent, thank you.
Any other staff reports?
One more staff report, Mayor, in our attempt to speed up council meetings, we're putting certain contracts or amendments, I should say, consent. And so Chief will provide a report on the Snow 911 amendment.
Good evening, council. It's once again time to look at the ILA between Snow 911 and the city of Mill Creek. There are some small operational changes that they've requested as the amendment to the ILA. These are not financial changes, just operational. It assists them with some of their third-party interaction. So I will be providing that in the packet for next week and hopefully have it on the consent agenda for you on the 29th.
So if you have questions ahead of the meeting for any reason, let us know. So we need to address those questions or pull it from the consent agenda. Any other reports?
No other reports, Mayor. Thank you.
The only thing I want to report on was we hosted the regional collaboration meeting, which has become a meeting with Mill Creek, Mukilteo, Mountain Lake Terrace, Briar, Linwood. Who am I forgetting? Edmonds, because that's right, Edmonds is spearheaded by Mayor Rosen. And I wish everyone, and especially the public, could see these meetings. They've been very productive. we haven't come up with too many tangible solutions yet, but everyone's putting their heads together, trying to figure out ways where we could save some resources. So some of the areas that have come up have been, for instance, payroll. Everyone's got big staff running numbers, processing payroll. Is that something that could be consolidated? Code enforcement, graffiti abatement, fleet maintenance, purchasing, procurement. These are a few things that came up. The big one, or I don't know how big it is, but coming out of Hart, remember the 1406 state sales tax rebates that we get back from the state for affordable housing. We're sitting on a pile of money that's a relatively small amount. Each city has it. We can't really do a dent on any kind of affordability. So we're looking at ways the cities could pool all the money collectively to leverage that. So at our next meeting in September, I think we're having someone from the housing HASCO. I can't remember what the acronym stands for. Housing Affordability, something of Snohomish County. Come talk to us about some of their programs. So we're trying to see how we can pool our resources because we get, I think it's 25 grand a year. It's not a big number, which we can't do much with. But when we collectively put it together, we're trying to see how we can leverage those dollars. So they've been very productive discussions. Mayor Pro Tem, any report?
Mayor, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
On what you just mentioned? So that 25K a year, has it been building and is there a pot of money?
Yeah, I think we have about 125 in there or something like that.
So just what exactly are our options? Does it have to be to
That's what we're-
purchase
that's
new
what-
housing
no,
or?
that's what we're
I'm saying
trying-
that, I'm saying not as a consortium, but as a council to maybe lower the heating bills for seniors or help with rental assistance for those in need through the
Those are
hardship
all the
programs.
options that we're going to be looking at. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I also wanted to shout out that meeting. It is really nice to be able to get together and collaborate with everyone. And like I mentioned to Rep. Berg, another big topic we had was really talking about our court fees, the public defender fees, trying to figure out something to work with each other around that. Also, I went to the SCC dinner and they had a great presentation. Councilmember Allison and Councilmember Jacquet were there as well. Great discussion on emergency planning and having some discussions. Sounds like they are working with our staff and our police department already with some emergency management stuff. It was really good discussions too, discussing a little bit on the realities that there may not be any FEMA to come to us to help us if we have problems. So just starting to navigate around what that's going to look like as well for the cities and the state. And finally, I want to just add real quick about the e-cycles or whatever they are. Thank you for the police department. I noticed that they put out a communication to let everyone at least know the difference between an e-bike and the e-motorcycles and what the requirements are. And as we had the couple residents come in tonight, I know everyone's also seeing things and hearing things, but I wanted to comment that just yesterday, the ones that were on Seattle Hill Road, one of the kids probably was about 12. He had on a helmet, but then he had like a 3-year-old or 4-year-old sitting in front of him on there without a helmet on and was on Seattle and was turning onto Seattle Hill Road. So that freaked out me and Cora a little bit. So I don't know what the answer is, but they're being really dangerous. So I appreciate the people coming in tonight to talk about it. And that's all I've got.
Could we have a motion to extend the regular meeting to 9:35, please?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Councilmember Cavalieri, any report?
Thanks, Mayor. Want to point out what great dialogue it was this evening. For what it's worth, it was, we moved it along. Everybody said their piece and we're making forward progress and I'm excited about that more than anything else. And I'm looking forward to next steps and glad the mayor gets to be part of it since he was one of the originators. That I would also like to maybe remark and say our prayers for the family of Ozzy Osbourne, who passed away today, who was, by the way, one of the first concerts I ever saw in Black Sabbath. And incredible man, made a lot of people happy. And I've lastly, I've received comments from, or emails and texts from citizens about the speed on 35th and the new, what they call the 146th Speedway through Webster's Pond. And not, as soon as I had just said that, my wife said that a drunk guy just plowed through the Webster's Pond sign and fountain not 5 seconds ago. And she's hoping that our front camera got it, but she's not sure. Anyway, we got to slow these folks down here, Chief. I think we have to start handing out some hefty tickets and maybe sending some people to jail for negligent driving. I don't care what the situation is. There's the citizens' complaints tonight about the e-bikes are only another nuance to that. So I wholeheartedly agree and glad my house being on the corner that my wife is okay. That's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Steckler,
No report, Mayor.
Councilmember Allison.
Yeah, I attended the Snohomish County Cities and Towns meeting with Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Duque. My two takeaways from that was during the emergency management presentation, that really relies on ham radio operators. We don't operate a ham radio here in the city. I talked to the city manager about that, but it was interesting that the median age of those operators is like about 70 years old. So if you know anybody that's young that is interested in ham radios, I would encourage you to tell them to go get trained.
Why do you keep looking at me after you said 70-year-old? Why are you doing that?
No. Oh, we do? Oh, he told me. we don't
If
have
I
it.
may, yeah.
Yeah.
We actually do have a DEM ham radio operator and 2 volunteers that come here to the city every Tuesday.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. And my question to the city manager might have been too specific. Like, do we have one of those little trailers that we pull around equipped? And he said no, so peace. And then the other element that I took away from it was, in the case of an emergency, the most important thing is that we know our neighbors, that we know the needs of our neighbors, and that we are there to help them, because we might not have FEMA or anybody else to come help us. So we all need to be as self-reliant as we possibly can be. That's it.
Councilmember Duque.
Yes, so it's been a couple weeks, but big thank you to the chamber and everyone who put together the Mill Creek Festival, and for all city staff who attended. I only know of one, I know that Mayor Pro Tem Danielle volunteered time, I believe, at the information booth, and so I'm sure others did as well. I don't know everyone's roles, but a big thank you to everyone at the event. I hope that we get some information from the chamber about how the event went. It seemed like it went well based off of the lunch and learn meeting, what they were telling us, but just wanted to flag that because that was a big deal. And that tomorrow, Wednesday, is the continued reminder for the summer concert series by the chamber. So I am really hoping to finally make it, but my kids are always a problem. So if anyone is going to attend, that would be great. I really appreciate city staff for providing us the public comments here printed. I think we don't always, so for people to know, we do get printed ones that have come onto the website. So that's really helpful for me. But on that note, I thought, and maybe if it's already been shared and I didn't know, but I thought Councilmember Steckler mentioned at the our last meeting, a question about learning more about South County Fire and the EMS changes that were mentioned that we were going to get. I believe Councilmember Steckler asked if we could get maybe an update on that, and I believe staff actually met with them, and so I was surprised I didn't hear about it in a report today, but I figured the meeting was so long that you'll fill us in next time or anything like that. So I don't know if I want to pause there.
Quickly respond to Councilmember
Well,
Duque.
let's have a motion to extend to 9:40, please.
Oh, sorry.
Move to extend
Second, because it's me.
to 9:40.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, any abstentions? Motion passes.
10 seconds. South County Fire will do a presentation on September 23rd to council.
And will that give us enough time to voice any concerns that we have before? Like, do we know when that decision is happening or what their process is like?
We have a very high level, good idea of the reasons organizationally why South County Fire currently has the staffing they do now at this location. I can discuss with the mayor pro tem on how we distribute that information if that's what you'd like before then.
Yes.
So we'll do that then, and then I'll get direction from the mayor pro tem. We can put something together, staff, maybe very high level, let council know at some point in time.
I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Just because if we continue to get questions on it, I want to make sure that we have general information. So I thank you for
So it
your
sounds like the
time.
decision is made? I just want to be clear because you're asking
Yes.
about,
Mhm.
yeah, and I'm hearing, no,
That's
the
correct.
decision has been
Decision
made.
was made, a redeployment. And these are.
I don't think they have to. But I think it would be fair if they would come and present so the public can provide.
Absolutely.
That's why we suggested we have them come in because they should take the brunt of this, not council and staff.
So they have the right to cut services without
Let's,
notifying us?
let's wait for them to give us the facts.
And if, in the meantime, if the city manager can provide what they learned in their meeting, I think that would be very helpful.
We
So
can provide that report next week.
that would be great. Okay, then on that, I wanted to bring up our favorite, is it a word of the day? Motorbikes, e-bikes. As part of the conversations that we've been having, that we heard, I wanted to flag that this weekend, maybe it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or something like that, at Buffalo Park, there was a whole different group of kids who were egging the playground, and some even hurt some of the kids, but they were all on their bikes. So this is all around the city in various ways. I also saw kids on, I don't know if it's an e-bike. I can't really tell the difference if someone has a pedal when
They're
they're driving past me.
e-motorcycles.
They're moving motorcycles.
If they're moving fast, it's not an e-bike.
Thank you very much. Because the thing is, when I talk to parents about it, they're like, oh no, we're following all the rules, but I don't know if they know what those rules are. So I found the city Mill Creek Police's graphic very helpful, but maybe not helpful for parents to understand if they buy something, what are the requirements? And if there's speed limit, there's certain things like that. So maybe that's something in addition to flag, but I wanted to think, because I do know that they did call non-emergency line and there was a police response. And so everything that we can do is happening. And so we just have to hope everyone takes on to that. And then last, I just wanted to flag the Mill Creek Little League Softball All-Star Team. I don't know if you guys saw an article, I think it was in the Everett Herald today or not, but I follow everything that has to happen to Mill Creek Little League, because as someone who was a softball player in my youths and who tried to be a coach for my boys, but they have no future in it. But they're now known as Team Washington because they represent the state of Washington in the softball stars. The girls are playing Idaho in the semis Wednesday at 3 p.m. and it's visible on ESPN Plus. So it's the All-Stars softball girl team. I know that the 10 and under baseball boys are in Washington. Someone, no? Anyways, sorry, I saw pointing. So that's it. So if anyone likes baseball or softball, you absolutely should watch. Thank you, everyone.
Councilmember Paddock.
No report.
Brings us to audience communication. Barb.
Barb Heidel, Mill Creek, Washington. First, thank you, Mayor. First, I am glad and relieved that the council decided that DRCC is not to be sold. Spending all that money to turn around and just sell the land was very disturbing to me. So I'm relieved that you're not doing that. Secondly, on another note, I wish to personally invite all council members and staff to join the police for our National Night Out at Pine Meadow Park on Tuesday, August 5th, between 5 and 8 p.m. Free hot dogs, free water, thank you, free ice cream, all kinds of activities, and it's a wonderful night. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. See no other members of the public in chambers. I see no members of the public online. We have no executive session on our agenda, and having reached the end of the agenda for the evening, I'll adjourn the meeting at 9:37. We'll reconvene for our special meeting a week from tonight.